make up for the 24 years of service, but we will present this now. And we are so glad that we had some of her family here to help us honor Ms. Costilla. Picture.
Oh, we all gonna go out there front or not?
Good, good.
Can we-
Are we gonna,
It's not very social distance. But
maybe we could take a,
We can just put her like right here.
Yeah, we
Put her
Yeah,
shot.
okay,
Yeah.
that works. It's okay with her. Just bring the family up.
You're gonna stay seated.
Oh,
Fill in.
oh, definitely. Get out of the way.
It's our favorite color.
Of course. What other color would that be? Would that be Rattler forever?
And we want you to open it in front of your family.
And then we'll have family come up for a picture.
If I can find it. It's there. Oh, my God.
After 24 years, she has lettered in school board.
My grandson got one in band and so did my granddaughter and my other grandson got one for football. And so, oh, now I have my own. Something that I really will cherish and I really appreciate.
And you can wear it to the first game.
I
It gets a little
know,
chilly.
when it gets cold. This is, I cannot begin to say my sincere thanks to you. Akatum is Mr. Superintendent and all my colleagues. Thank you for the time that I've been on this board. It's been a very rewarding and amazing experience, one that I will never forget. It was a learning experience. 54 years ago when I graduated from high school, if somebody would have told me I would have been an elected official, I probably have laughed it off and said, really? Not in my world. But here I am 24 years later, and it's been very, very rewarding for me. And I really appreciate, I was counting yesterday, I was thinking about the number of school board members that I've had the privilege to serve along with. And there's been like 30 plus different school board members during the 24 years. And I think it was 9 superintendents that we counted. And, but it's during the 24 years, it's been a learning experience and I wish everybody the very best. I know that these are very different times with the pandemic that's going on. But I think we're doing the best that we can, given everything that's happening. And I sincerely extend my appreciation to the superintendent and his administrative staff for all the hard work that's been going on to make sure that our students and our staff and everybody else is safe and healthy in these trying times, so it's been a privilege. I'm very honored to have been elected by the constituents of precinct District 3 to serve for this term period of time. And I will forever be grateful to them for having given me the experience and the opportunity and the honor to undertake that responsibility here. So thank you. I would like to maybe mention something that's very dear to me. I've never really publicly said anything, but my family and my friends who are really truly close friends have supported me all along. And I extend to them my sincere appreciation, especially to my husband. He's put up with quite a bit. But I extend to him my sincere appreciation. And the other person that I really wanted to identify and really come to mind is Georgette. She has been the rock of this entire school district. I could not, anytime we needed something, and I think that says the same thing for other board members here. Anytime you need something, you call Georgette. And she finds it, she doesn't have it, she'll look for it, she brings it up, and here it is, and takes care of the problem. Not to say that the superintendent doesn't, but I think that, I think that he's got the right hand with him. And thank to everybody, and I wish everybody the best of luck. And I know that we will continue to work hard, just like we might not have been on the same page many a time as far as the board is concerned. But I think we all have the same focus to make sure that our students are successful, that we advocate for them as much as we can. And right now, to make sure that they're all safe and especially in the environment that we're in. So I will have sometimes when I will be sad of not being part of, like I've been part, but those are not going to be for long. You know, they're just going to separation. Separation and loss is something to really deal with, but I'm ready for it. And I will think about everybody and wish everybody the best of luck. Thank you so much. And I will really use this. Thank you. My family members are here. Would you come over here so that way we can take
A picture of all of
Well,
y'all with her.
I will leave my jacket on this.
Yeah.
When you want to go back.
Just gonna pick up, because it was on the floor.
Go back over here.
Let me just say that I am a high school, San Marcos High School graduate. So is my husband. My 2 sons are San Marcos High School graduates. My 4 grandsons have gone through the process of having graduated from here. This is the newest one, so she's got several years to go still. But they're all products of San Marcos High School, and for that I'm very proud. We have here who's a football player for the Bobcats this year, and this is Drake, who is my other grandson, and very successful too. Of course, my granddaughter is going to be starting nursing school. Of course, you know Nico, who has been trying to follow in my footsteps, and maybe he'll get there. We don't know yet. My granddaughter, and of course, this is the baby of the grandchildren. She's the 5th one. So, and of course, my husband, Salvador. And anyway, they wanted me to hurry because they want to go eat.
And Kelly.
Oh, Kelly. Well, I said my daughter-in-law, Kelly. And
Yes.
I said Alexander, the football player.
All right, y'all ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. So that way I won't forget it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lupe.
You right? Yeah.
That's better than I'm. I like
Well-
that. I can use that.
You can tell her.
No. We can continue. We're ready to go for the superintendent's report next. We'll have reports from academic, bilingual, CARES update. Ready?
Madam President, members of the board, thank you. It's good to be back in person. It's good to have kids back in person. And having said that, I'd like to give a shout out to, I think Trustee Costilla mentioned this earlier, all our staff members. I think the one consistent message we have since March is the wonderful staff members we have, from child nutrition to transportation to maintenance to our teaching staff, our instructional assistants, the administrators. You know, when I see colleagues, when I see school districts, when I hear stories about other districts and what they're not doing to support their students and their staff, it makes me proud to be superintendent that our staff members, you know, have done a remarkable job. Does that mean we're perfect? No, we make mistakes, but I think we make mistakes trying to do what's right for our students. And it's been really good for the past week to see our students back in the building. I don't know, I can't speak for anybody but myself, but my stress levels go down when I see kids in front of teachers, because I think our teachers have the unique ability to take care of our students and let us know what it is we need to do to support them. So it's been good. I also want to congratulate our middle school cross-country teams this past weekend. Our 7th grade boys and girls were district champions. Let me rephrase that. They earned their district championships. Our 8th grade girls earned their district championships, and our 8th grade boys, if I get it right, lost the championship by 1 second or so.
Correct.
They came in 2nd place, so we would have had a clean sweep. And we are competing in cross country against Hayes, CISD, Seguin, and some other area middle schools. So it's really good to see our kids do well. I also want to take a moment to thank Chris Cooper. I know that she retired as a longtime teacher out of the high school. But before she left, she gave us a wonderful submitting a nomination for the Texas Arts Education Association Visual Arts Award. TAEA honors school districts. They call it the District of Distinctions. Over 1,000 school districts are eligible to apply, and we are one of 42 who earn that honor. The award recognizes districts with outstanding leadership in promoting the arts in their district and community. And if you go around town, you'll see our kids' artwork as they work with professional artists throughout the city, painting murals in the walls during the summer. We're constantly in the community. We're at the Price Center. We have a revolving show with student work. And that's a testament to our art teachers who really believe that art helps create both sides of the brain and the mind. And with that, I was supposed to pretend that somebody's handing me something, but you know, it is what it is. On behalf of San Marcos CISD, we would like to accept this award for TAEA, and we'll give it to Ms. Presley so she can put it in the high school and proudly display it here. And we want to again thank Ms. Cooper. She is, I think, going out of town, but we have it recorded and we'll get the message over to the state folks for a conference. And then finally, my last thanks is to Trustee Costilla. It's funny, when I started May 3rd, when the board approved me, she had my ear May 4th at the Cinco de Mayo event. I don't know if you remember Guatemala. She got a hold of me to let me know what it is, you know, her expectations for me, which is good. You need to know those things. And then we ended tonight, she met with me. So kind of a symmetry that, you know, I started my career and then she's ending her career by still wanting to meet. But what I really want to say is it's because of policymakers and elected officials like Trustee Costilla that a Hispanic superintendent gets to sit here and guide the district, because people like Trustee Costilla have been fighting the fight a long time and give us the privilege of being able to now take that mantle. So we appreciate you. I personally appreciate everything you have done to make me not only a good human being, but hopefully a better superintendent. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
With that, I end my superintendent's report. Madam President, that's it.
Ready for the academic update? Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Holiday, when I do want to let the community know that our live stream is down for a little bit, or they're trying to reboot it right now, but we are recording on Zoom. They came to let me know that we went down a little bit, so hopefully they'll get that live stream back up, but in case, we'll have the Zoom recording.
So good evening, President Cantu, Board of Trustees, Mr. Cardona, Superintendent Cardona. My name is Monica Valadez. I'm the Director of Bilingual Education. And I'm doing an update, and this update is on the 1920 school year. So beginning with the first slide, we have our bilingual and ESL programs, and those at the elementary level are our dual language, which are grades pre-K through third grade last year. So this year we are pre-K through fourth grade. And then we have our transitional grades, and that's the program that is being phased out. And so last year they were in fourth and fifth grades. This year we only have 4 transitional classrooms there at the fifth grade level. So next year will be pre-K through fifth grade will be dual language. And then at our secondary level, we have our ESL, and those are 6th through 12th grades. And newcomer also is included under ESL, but just simply I put it underneath just to kind of give y'all an to 3 years, depending on their progress in English. So this is our program staff. Currently, we have 38 dual language teachers. Those are pre-K through third grade last year. This year we have 41. I just made a side note at the very bottom to kind of give you a quick update on the 2021 numbers. Last year we had 8 transitional teachers. These were 4th and 5th grades. Again, they were implementing our old bilingual model. 4 ESL teachers, and these are 2 at San Marcos High School, 1 at each of our Miller and Goodnight middle schools. 1 dual language coach that serves our district, and then 1 ESL coach that serves our district. Next slide. So these are our waiver, certification, and recruitment. So every year by November 1st, we have to update TEA to let them know if we have any teachers who are serving an English learner but are not appropriately certified. So these are numbers from last year. So last year we had 0 bilingual exemptions. So that means that all of our teachers who were serving in the dual language program and transitional programs or bilingual programs, they were all appropriately certified. For our ESL, we did have 17 teachers, 8 at the elementary and 9 at the secondary levels, that did not have ESL certification. They had an English learner enrolled in one of their classrooms, but they were not ESL certified. This is for teachers who teach ELAR specifically. Out of those 17 teachers over the course of last year, we provided support. We enrolled them in the online ESL preparation, ESL Academy through Region 13. 12 of them have tested and passed. 1 simply needs to add the certification to her teacher certificate. And then the remaining, we're going to work with them throughout this year to make sure that they're ESL certified by the end of the year. We also have had conversations with Dr. Bias and Human Resource so that new hires have the stipulation that need to become ESL certified within 6 months of hire if they're not already certified when they're hired. Again, we did certification through Region 13, the online ESL preparation program. We also implemented Sheltered Instruction Academy. So Dr. Cruz Fernandez supported this effort, and over the course of last year went from in-person to online with COVID-19. And that really kind of helped flourish, actually, the Sheltered Instruction program, because we were able to reach more teachers. And we were able to identify teachers who helped support that effort and began to do presentations on the strategies that they use in their classroom to their colleagues. And then, of course, we had coaching cycles with our dual language coach and ESL coach. Recruitment, of course, outreach to bilingual education programs, especially here at Texas State University. But then HR did a lot of job fairs and outreach to other organizations and preparation programs. We also did presentations to bilingual student teachers to help them understand what kind of program that we're implementing and really attract them. So I've highlighted just a few because it's a little lengthy on the language development, but really it is the cornerstone of English learner growth. And one of the things that we really focus on, and I'm going all the way down to the last bullet, is the foundational, right? So the increase in awareness of language development is foundational to the English learner growth. And that's across content areas. That's not just their access to English and them learning the proficiency in English. This is really access to content, all right? So our math content area teachers, our social studies, our science, really have to understand that at the root of their content is language development. Because students need to not only know the content, but they're supposed to be able to speak to the content, and they're supposed to be able to write to the content. That's what's going to be expected of them as they progress through school, but that's also going to be expected of them as they go to universities. I spoke about this last year, just the differences between the cognitive academic language and then the basic language. And so really helping our teachers understand that they are language models. Again, this doesn't just apply to the teachers that are bilingual teachers. This applies to all of our teachers. They are language models. First and foremost, they are modeling how to speak that cognitive, that academic language that students read in books, that they read on STAR exams, that they read on their EOCs. So really that language model is what we focus on when we do the sheltered instruction, when we organize and provide professional development, our language objectives as well. The next slide. Okay, so super tiny script. I'm sorry about that. There was a lot to pack in there, but I just highlighted a few, and I'll just speak to a few of them from the district level all the way down to the teacher level. And so this is teacher development and student support. So at the district level, again, I mentioned it already, the Sheltered Instruction Academy, Dr. Cruz Hernandez has taken it from in-person to virtual. So we really are able to reach a lot more teachers. And last year, we also began to explore the differentiation across departments. So we started partnering with special education because both of our student populations, more than anything, need to make sure that our teachers are utilizing strategies that help make their content comprehensible to students. Again, it's not just about ELAR, it's about every single content area. We need to make it comprehensible to our students, and that's what that differentiation means. And so we partnered with special education to do teacher development over the course of the summer. And so this year, our efforts are going to continue, but we've begun to have conversations not only with special education, but also with RTI 504, GT, to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. It's about making it comprehensible to all of our students, not just our English learners. And then we also did an audit of content and language allocation plans. So those are really what drives our dual language instruction in our classrooms. So teachers receive plans that let them know what language will be utilized for what content areas based on their grade level, and then what percentage of their day is going to be in Spanish and what percentage of their day is going to be in English. And so we had Dr. Barbara Kennedy, and I'll speak a little bit more about her background. We had her come, really it was prior to just the day before all of this hit, March 13th. We sat down with her for a whole day. She did an audit of our language and allocation plans, content and language allocation plans, and she kind of poked holes in them so that we could tighten them up. And so over the course of the summer, we revisited them, modified them, adjusted them, and put them back out to our teachers and our administrators so that they would know how the students in the dual language program are grown in terms of their language development in English and Spanish over the course of pre-K through this year, 4th grade. At the campus level, we provided some new resources, benchmark education. Our Gen Ed classrooms received Fountas and Pinnell. Our dual language classrooms received benchmark education. And one of the reasons we did that was benchmark education is in English and in Spanish, very equitable resources for both English and Spanish. And so the teachers have really liked the program. This is 2nd through 5th grade teachers have received the product and are utilizing the program. The other one was Imagine Learning, and Imagine Learning is a pricey program, so we utilized it last year really as an intervention for some of our middle schoolers, and that was also to gain not only proficiency in comprehension and reading, but also in English, and they've proven to be really good, 2 good products. We also use student dialogue circles at campuses. We did student dialogue circles with Miller and with Goodnight. We sat down with all of our English learners at both campuses and really provided understanding of what English learner means, but also the rationale behind TELPAS, and then how to begin to attack that assessment so that they begin to understand how to demonstrate their proficiency in English. And of course, at the teacher level, it was really about coaching cycles at both the elementary and secondary levels, getting into classrooms, finding out what teachers are utilizing in terms of strategies, and then helping support their use of current strategies, but then their implementation of new strategies. So the number of students enrolled in the program. So I color-coded those for you guys to kind of give you a better understanding. The red are dual language numbers. The blue are dual language numbers, but are non-L students who are native English speakers. And then the green are ESL, and the orange are transitional. I hope that makes sense. That's an awful lot of colors now that I see it. But and so our program right now, last year was at 650 dual language students. So it's continued to grow. One of the things that we have had is some withdrawals from the program due to COVID and parents really not understanding how to fully support their children at home since they don't speak that second language. So again, we are working with Global Lingo, which is Dr. Kennedy's consultation firm, to really help support our parents. And she's already done a presentation to parents to help them understand how to support their children at home through remote and through a language that they themselves do not speak. So next. And I know this is just a lot of information. I'm sorry, it's just, but I think it's important to kind of give y'all a good overview. So the numbers of students on monitor status. So monitor status, these are students that were at one point English learners. They're now met criteria for proficiency through TELPAS. And so the state of Texas requires districts to continue to monitor those students for an additional 4 years. So that you'll see first year, second, third, fourth year, that's of monitoring. And so those are the number of students per grade level and what year monitoring they're on. So as you see, coming from third grade, there's a lot fewer. As you increase the grade level, the more students become on the monitor list because they're meeting the exit criteria. And that fifth one is new. So there's a fifth year that really isn't a monitor year. That's really to identify students who were formerly English learners. And the only reason the state decided to include that is so that us as a district can begin to identify students who are formerly ELs and how they're accessing different resources on our campuses, whether that's GT program, advanced academics, early college, high school, et cetera. So it gives us an idea of where our former English learners are. So reclassification. So reclassification of English learners in COVID. So the testing window for English learners is February through March. And of course, we know what happened. And so all of our elementary campuses had finished their TELPAS testing. Our secondary campuses had not finished their TELPAS testing. And so the state allowed us as a district or districts to utilize lost links, which is the test that we utilize to identify whether or not a student is an English learner when they first enroll with us. So we use that language assessment to identify any students who potentially would have reclassified had they had the opportunity to take TELPAS. And so those are typically recommended by teachers. Teachers will recommend students for reclassification if they feel they have a certain level of proficiency where they would meet the advanced high in every single category, which is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Out of the 46 recommended students, 8 of them met reclassification. So this year they'll be in their first year of monitoring. And so now we have to go back and revisit why the others who were recommended didn't and provide them support. What I will say is that some of the results from the elementary campuses, at our first grade, we had 59% of our students that increased the at least one proficiency level. They might have increased between 1 to 3 proficiency levels. That was 59% at first grade, 49 at second, 47 at third, 31 at fourth, and then 67% at our fifth grade level reached advanced at least one proficiency level within TELPAS. Go ahead. And then we have just quick parent and family engagement. We continue with our learning exchanges with parents. For the dual language program, it really is about helping our parents who are Spanish speakers within the program understand where our parents who are native English speakers come from and vice versa. They have very different language stories and within very different contexts of where how they access language, how they don't access language, the resources that they have. And so this opportunity was really about bringing those different parents together to introduce themselves in a different way and reach across differences, right? Oftentimes, and I likened it, when I did this presentation, I likened it to like a fifth grade dance where all the boys are on one side and all the girls on the other side and nobody wants to dance. So we had English dominant parents on one side, Spanish dominant parents on the other side. So how do you get them to dance to really understand their perspective around language so that we can build a foundational program which really the parents and the family are so significant to its sustainability. And so just quick updates for 2020, 2021. And I won't go through all of them. I'll just pick a couple of them. One of them, well, I'll pick 2. TELPAS Pro. So that's through Intervene, and that's an online assessment and practice program. So it's designed to really prepare our English learners for TELPAS. It gets them to really fully understand the format of the exam, to really get to practice the speaking, which oftentimes students don't do well on. because they feel embarrassed. They feel like somebody else is listening to the answer that they're recording into the mic. And so they don't speak loud enough. So they're not able to rate them, etc. So it really gives them an opportunity to practice that format. And it's shown to increase their proficiency just from really understanding fully the format of the exam. And then the other one is Mastering English Language. This is super important. It's a new course at middle school campuses at Goodnight and at Miller. So our ESL teachers last year, remember there's only one ESL teacher at Miller, one at Goodnight. These teachers were teaching ELAR. So instead of teaching ELAR this year, they are teaching Mastering English Language. So their focus is working with newcomer students to understand or develop the listening ear for English, and then being able to produce English and speak English. So we feel like helping those and targeting our newcomers to really not focus so much on ELAR, allow the ELAR teachers to focus on that, but allow our ESL teachers to really focus on the development of English will help support our newcomers within their mainstream classrooms. So those are the two big quick updates, and I will end my presentation there. Thank you so much.
Can I ask you, so on this multicolor chart, which ones would be your newcomers?
So our newcomers aren't color coded, and the reason they're not color coded is really they're part of our ESL program. So really they would be in the green in the 6th through 12th grades. At the elementary, they're not considered newcomers because they have a program that's Spanish in their language for the most part. If we have a student at the elementary level that comes with a language other than Spanish or English, sometimes we'll have a student that maybe speaks Arabic. They would be enrolled in the ESL classroom, but really the newcomer are 6th through 12th grade students.
Okay. Anyone else have questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. I'm Mike Doyle. I'm a director of federal programs and CTE. And tonight I would like to update everyone on the CARES Act and how it's impacted our San Marcos School District. All right. So what does the CARES Act provide? So I want to first explain that the overarching theme, if you will, is CARES Act is the legislation. It is what was produced by the federal government. And within CARES Act, there's several revenue sources for multiple entities, but specifically what we're going to look at under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act is how LEAs or school districts receive funding and how we as San Marcos CISD have utilized those funds. So specifically, as you can see here, there are multiple funding sources, but two that we're going to look at are the ESSER grant, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, and then also the CRF, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, okay? So looking at it as like an umbrella, you have CARES Act, and then you have two funding sources, ESSER, which is commonly called CARES Act funds, but I want to make that delineation. And then you have CRF funds. And so under CRF, those are actually reimbursement funds. And you have two reimbursement sources. First is the CRF reimbursement, and then you have the bulk purchase reimbursement program of technology. Andrew, if you want to click it. So first, let's look at ESSER. So ESSER is a program, a grant that is administrated through the Department of Education. It's a federal grant program that's pushed down to TEA. Now, the second bullet is very important to understand. And so I'm going to kind of focus on this. TEA is using this ESSER grant federal fund to offset the reduction in state funding. Okay, I want to repeat that. TEA is using the ESSER grant funds to offset the reduction in state funding. So what this means is this is not supplemental funds. These are funds that we should have had at our state and local budget already. But to make up that gap, TEA is using this ESSER grant funds. So it's not supplemental. So think of a cake. Your cake is your state and local funds. The icing on the cake normally is your Title I supplemental. It's the thing that makes everything really good, all that. It's your supplemental piece to the cake. We're not getting the supplemental icing here. This is the makeup of funds. So the second bullet here that I want to point out too is that even though it is not supplemental, there is broad flexibility in the use of funds, but the catch is we still have to maintain and adhere to what is regulated in the grant program. Yeah, it is flexible, but we still have to adhere to those things. This grant was released on June 12th, so kind of keep that in mind as well. The timeline moved really quickly. March hit, pandemic was declared. Late March, CARES Act was established. Language started being produced in April, May, and our grant was opened on the 12th. We submitted the grant by the 26th of June. We were able to do some pre-award costs back to March 13th. And we have also planned out those funds to be utilized. The grant ends September 30th of 2022, meaning that's your final expense report. San Marcos was entitled to a little over $1.6 million as well. So going back to that supplement thing, all right? Looking at box one, I guess I want to drive this home again. So these funds come with program adherence. We must utilize these funds on activities that are reasonable in nature, that are necessary to meet the overall objective of the program. And that is key right there. That the overall objective of the ESSER grant program is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the COVID pandemic. So all the expenditures are aligned with an allowable cost, and that language is documented. We're subject to audit. We're subject to adhering to these rules. Yes, there is broad flexibility, but the idea that this is just extra money that districts have to spend is not the case. So what have we used our ESSER grant funds on so far? We've utilized the funds to, like I said, prepare our school district for students for both virtual and in-person learning. We looked at and we're able to obtain sanitization and also cleaning products, purchasing educational technology, hardware, software, and really kind of that last bullet, activities that are necessary in maintaining the operation of our school. Okay. So that's ESSER. Now let's look at CRF. This is extremely restricted. That first bullet is really an anomaly with school districts. This program is administrated through the Department of Treasury, and that comes with a laundry list of restrictions. This is unheard of and really an unprecedented thing. And so the Treasury Department allocated these resources and put them down at the governor's office throughout all the 50 states and territories, right? And so the governor's office had the discretion to manage these CRF funds. And so governor's office of the state of Texas is working in conjunction with the Texas Department of Emergency Management Response to set up CRF programs. For us specifically, we have the two programs. Like I've talked about, we have our reimbursement, and we have the bulk purchase local match reimbursement program. So specifically speaking about our reimbursement program. Now, before I go into the depth of it, I want to point out that we are one of about 700 school districts in the state of Texas that actually completed the reimbursement program. It's extremely restrictive, extremely difficult, and from that statement alone, not a lot of school districts, about half of them, did not even venture into this reimbursement program. Again, it's administered through the TDM website. It's designed to reimburse school districts for supplemental allowable expenditures for the time frame specifically of March 1 through May 20th of 2020. The application opened up on July 30th, and we're required to submit our reimbursement requests by the end of September. So again, allowable uses, because it's through the Department of Treasury, it's extremely restrictive. that date timeline really poses the challenge. And then the allowabilities that fall within the program itself are restrictive as well. They again have to be necessary expenditures due to the COVID pandemic. They also have to have allowable costs that were not accounted for in the most recently approved budget as of March 27, 2020. So what did we apply for reimbursement for? Again, some specific technology hardwares, cleaning and sanitization products, and other products that helped continue the district's path leading through the pandemic. And like I said, when it's all said and done, our reimbursement was just a little over $37,000, but that is additional resources that we were able to bring back to the district. The next CRF program is really a great one to highlight. So this is the bulk purchase local match reimbursement program. The actual program grant, if you will, was released on September 7th. But what TEA did with a portion of their CRF allocation was went out and bought a massive amount of hardware for the entire state of Texas with the idea of this program in mind. So TEA bought all this hardware, and with the size of their purchase, we're able to leverage funds and obtain that hardware quicker and with a greater demand. So then they opened up this program where districts could match or could buy from TEA with CRF funds, right? So we had to contribute 50%. TEA would contribute 50%. And I'll show you how, because of our partnership that we were able to create with the city of San Marcos, leverage additional match funds, which worked out for a benefit for our school district. So the program opened up on September, and originally we had purchased through the state of Texas a total of $395,700 worth of hardware technology. We contributed $197,850, which is 50% toward that purchase. But because the city of San Marcos contributed 25% match, a little over $98,000, TEA upped their match from 50 to 75. So they actually paid a total of, man, I need new glasses, $298,775,000. So what that all boils down to is all the hardware we were able to obtain came to no cost at the district.
Good
So
job.
again, thank you, City of San Marcos, for that partnership and contribution.
Awesome.
So what's to come? That's the big question in 2020, right? But specifically for grant funds and any of these special allotment funds for Corona relief. Back in August, we were told, August-September timeframe, we were told by TEA that there's a possibility for some more funds coming through a Title VIII of Division B serve. And again, what really is happening is USDE is holding on to money, and they're waiting to see how school districts and states and different entities have spent their money before they release any more. So we're kind of still waiting for more guidance from TEA and USDE on that. But good news is that today I was actually able to speak with Hays County. And Hays County has a portion of CRF funds that they want to contribute and allow San Marcos School District to utilize. Again, I just opened up that conversation today. So we don't know what we're going to be able to utilize those funds for, but it's still another opportunity for us to leverage funds and to have another partnership with our Hays County. And before I end, I want to stop and say, I got to thank all the people, business office, HR, finance. This has been a tremendous amount of legwork, not just on my end, but looking at codes, planning out every expenditure and making sure that these programs are not overlapping, but aligning so that we can really leverage the funds to make sure that we're supporting our school district, our buildings, our students, all the people in the school districts, to make sure that we're prepared and we can respond properly to the coronavirus pandemic. With that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Redondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Mr. Doyle, thank you so much for the presentation this evening. My question is in regards to the governor's office announcement on the 14th of their TDAM TEA rapid COVID-19 testing pilot program. To go live in 2 weeks. Is it the intent of San Marcos CISD to apply to be a part of that COVID-19 rapid coronavirus testing through TEA?
I have not seen anything come across from TEA in regards to that. So it's definitely something that we'll look at, consider. And again, all these programs we're looking at to see how we can leverage those funds to support our school district, right? So until I see further notice,
Okay, thank you.
I think the TEA's chosen certain districts. I know that Sletta was one that they apparently they have an early application. So we'll keep it.
Any other questions? Ms. Costilla?
Thank you. That's really helpful. But the question that I get asked quite frequently is that how much money is left from COVID that we got? I think it would be good for this community to get this information and understand that, because there's some perception out there that we still have monies here and that we're holding on to that money and that, we shouldn't be taking it from fund balance if we have this or whatever. So I think the community needs to know where we're at specifically with when it comes to COVID money, that they think that we're sitting on COVID money still.
okay. That's information that we can.
I think that would be very good to disseminate that information.
My question was, when you said that we were only reimbursed $37,891 and 61 cents, that means that there was a part that was not reimbursed
That we were not able to meet eligibility, yes.
for reimbursement,
Yes.
but the cost was greater than that.
And in speaking to colleagues from other districts who are handling CRF, same thing. They're looking at just pennies on what they could actually meet reimbursement on because of the restrictions and just the whole, how the Department of Treasury has set up that program.
Any other questions?
Well, going along with that, I think it's important for people to know what is covered under COVID monies that are coming and what isn't covered under, because not everything is covered under COVID money.
Right.
A lot of people seem to think that we need to be using money to pay teachers, instructional staff, and they have this perception that we're not using this money correctly.
Again, it all tied to need and then also program requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Update on social emotional program?
Well, good evening, President Cantu, Superintendent Cardona, and Board of Trustees. So tonight I'm going to give an update on social emotional learning and how it's weaved together with our school counseling model. Should I take my mask off? Okay. So my goal of tonight is to make sure that I ground all of us in the language of what SEL is, and then also how it blends with school counseling. So one thing that I really want to highlight is the fact that SEL is threaded through everything that we do. In this meeting, at this moment, we are practicing good SEL skills. We're actively listening. We're allowing for open dialogue to happen. We're taking in others' perspectives. And so we want to keep in mind that this is happening through everything that we do. And so it's not just in isolation. So we don't have SEL in just one place, or it lives just with school counselors. It lives within all of us. And so when we look at the brain and we look at our SEL competencies, we see at the bottom, social awareness is one of those areas where that is our foundation. That's where we try and build our skills with our students, because we know without self-awareness, we're not able to then build upon those other skills. So we really want to make sure that we focus in that area and we grow all of those areas so that we are creating students that are ready to function within our community. And so when you look at the other area of how school counselors are supporting SEL, so we have the school counseling core curriculum. When you think about that, you think about it from the perspective of academics and tier 1 instruction. So we liken that to tier 1 instruction because we know that if we are providing strong tier 1 instructions for students, they are thriving. So it's the same thing with school counseling lessons. That is our tier 1. That's where we cast our widest net in order to be able to support all of our students. And that comes by the way of school counselors and our SEL counselors. And then we have our individual student planning. And that's another area where we focus, and it's more intentional. And that's where we're focusing on individual students in small groups by providing lunch bunch, and I'll get to that on the next slide, but you really see the intentionality when we're doing individual planning. And then responsive services, that's our crisis support. That's when things are happening on our campus, when our students are at most need, and we're responding to those needs. And then system support is the foundation of what a comprehensive school counseling program will look like. It is what supports all of those other areas so that we are able to function in a strong way. Thank you. So school counselors in action. This is an overview of what school counselors are doing. It's not everything that we're doing, but you get to see and you get an idea of the types of supports that are happening. So when you look at school counseling core curriculum, that's our preventative. Again, that's our tier 1. School counseling lessons, we partner with outside agencies in order to, again, provide those services that are tailored and detailed to the needs of our students. So we use NAMI to come in and provide presentations, not only for our parents, but for our students as well. And then we have individual student planning. And again, it goes back to when you're on campuses and you'll see lunch bunch. Those are those small groups, grief groups, divorce groups, and then that social development, where it's really important that we make sure that, again, it's personalized and that we are helping our students in order to be productive citizens in our community. And then responsive services, it goes back to that crisis response, parent communication, planning meetings in order to ensure that if a crisis does come about, we are prepared and we're able to serve our students. And then system support. That comes in the way of campus professional development. And that's where our counselors are providing that professional development for our staff members. And they're giving them opportunities to learn and grow within SEL to help them to be able to support students. Because again, keeping in mind, SEL is not a standalone. It lives within all of us. We see it in our classrooms, in our instructional time. It's happening everywhere we go. And then also through parent education. So when you think about system supports, we have those words down at the bottom, just so that when you're thinking about these things, you can see it in a way where you can create that picture, where it's our structure of how we are going to support our campuses and our community. So this slide is an overview of our SEL supports and partnerships. So we wanted to give you an idea of who we are partnering with in order to continue to support the work that we're doing. So current partnerships. One of the ones I wanted to highlight was with Pure Edge. We have an opportunity to partner with them. Mr. Cardona was able to bring them in a few years ago, but now continuing to be more intentional about how we utilize them. At the beginning of the year, they were able to train over 600 teachers, and we're bringing them back every opportunity that we have to provide support for teachers and also for our students. So we're working to ensure that we embed that into everything that we do and having opportunities for mindfulness and ensuring that we're taking time for ourselves. Utilizing communities and schools, that's our newest partnership. And that we have at 5 of our campuses. So Travis, Crockett, the middle schools, and then the high school. And so communities and schools provides an opportunity for students to have case management support. And the idea of communities and schools is that they remove any type of barrier that a student has to gaining education. And so it is very tailored and detailed to the student's needs, but also realizing that there's also a whole other population on that campus. So they're able to provide trainings for staff and for students. They're able to provide school counseling lessons in the classroom along with their partner counselor. So again, they're tailor their plan in order to meet that campus need. And then emerging partnerships and T-Chat and the crisis hotline, I'll get to on another slide. So I'll make sure that we talk about that. But reigniting our partnership with the School of Social Work at Texas State and bringing in interns on certain campuses so that we can fill those gaps. And also being very intentional about how we utilize interns and making sure that the readiness is there for both the counselor, the campus, and that intern. So we're making sure that that partnership is very strong. And district synergy. So again, we go back to that idea of how SEL does not just live with school counselors. It lives in everything that we do. So making sure that we partner with other departments within our district to ensure that SEL is as robust as it can possibly be. So when you think about Hall of Fames, so we have a partnership with Hall of Fames where teachers are able to earn badges by implementing SEL into their daily instruction. So mindful movement, having an opportunity for students to take perspective, to teach them how to take someone else's perspective. And it's really important that we teach these things while the kids are here with us. And then you can see SEL in Abbott. We're utilizing it with our family and community engagement services, just any opportunity that we can to engage our parents and our students in a different way, but to continue to see that it lives within all of us. So our crisis response. Some of these things you're very familiar with, and I'll go over the last two in our next slide. But ensuring that when a crisis comes about, because crises do happen, that we do have the appropriate support in place to ensure that we're supporting our students and our family. So on our district website, we have all of our resources so families are able to go to the website and utilize those resources. We have SHIVE. We partner with SHIVE and MCOT and SMPD in order to provide a wellness check. They come out and they provide risk assessments for students. And then also being able to provide the mental health support. And then on the next slide, I'll go into more detail. So when we think about the new emerging things that we are doing for crisis response, we have what's called T-Chat. And this is a very personalized service for students. And so they're able to provide assessment, brief intervention, and stabilization through Dell Medicine. And so you have a one-sheeter in your board book about this. But it gives you an idea of the type of supports that they're able to provide for our students. And so our school counselors will act as the connection between T-Chat and our families. So counselors will be trained on how to identify students, to then refer them for the service. But then also counselors are able to use them for consultation. So when they run across a student and there is some type of crisis or mental health need, they can reach out to find out, okay, what is the best way for me to then access the service to support the student? And the students are able to have at least, or at maximum, 4 consultations throughout the entire school year. And the service is free. And then we move on to all of our kids. Oh, okay, we move on to all of our kids. So crisis hotline. So then there's AVAIL. And MCOT in our county uses AVAIL. And AVAIL is available in many counties and also school districts. And so they're able to provide crisis hotline support. But often with school districts, they're working more as a warm line. So when a student is going through something, they're able to access this 24 hours a day. They give us our own phone number. And so it's just for SMCISD students. And we receive daily logs of whomever has called. So then that allows us an opportunity to then reach out and then provide additional support. But this gives us another layer of support for students to be able to access when they are in need. So that kind of gives you the overview of tier 1 supports, but then also how are we managing and supporting our students through crisis response. All right, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to share what we're doing and how SEL is working in our district.
President Cantu.
Have a question, Mr. McLaughlin?
Sure. Have you taken any specific steps to increase awareness of available services for students during virtual learning and COVID adjustments?
Yes. So on our campuses, so at least once a month or twice a month, our counselors do what's called a Rattler parent check-in. So they are offering a time for parents to come in through via Zoom, and then they're able to hear different things that are offered on campus. And then they also partner with their parent liaison to then be able to share what are our resources, what do we have, and then all of our counselors have a Canvas page. So then then students are able to then go to the Canvas page to then be able to see those resources as well, and then also district website.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Back to the slide that referenced the Communities in Schools program, you mentioned that there were 5 campuses across the ISD currently. Can you explain the rationale behind the selection of the 2 elementary campuses that have the Communities in Schools program? Why Crockett and Travis?
Because they went to the meeting. They went to the meeting in Austin because they were all principals asked and they chose to go. And then after that, it became a funding issue, so we decided to go after 5 schools. We knew the secondary schools, we needed it like pretty quickly. But Travis, obviously, having 3 shelters that feed them was an issue. And then Crockett, because he really advocated for that.
Okay, so if it was because principals went to the meeting, does that need to take board action to get it at other campuses on the east side, or what needs to take place for that to
We have
happen?
campuses on the east side. We have Midnight.
Elementary campuses, excuse me.
The issue will be sustainability. So we work with communities in school. They felt that 5 was a model they could support. I don't know if they can support 13 schools. I'm almost positive they can't. 5 was a stretch to get them to, but
I would be interested as an individual trustee to see at least one elementary school on the east side with communities and schools. And if that's a budgetary consideration or something from the board, I'm ready to bring that item forward.
Or are the elementary principals, will they meet to discuss what kind of services that they could share some information so that there's cross-training or cross?
well, I mean, at this point, it's really a matter of whether communities in school has the ability to get another school, whether the board wants it or not. If they don't have the ability, the board can authorize it, but if they can't get the services, then
And also one thing that we're doing to ensure that there's equity is having communities and schools be a part of everything we do as school counselors. So sharing those ideas, sharing those supports, so then that they can be added or implemented on another campus. And then also by partnering with Texas State, having social work interns on those campuses that don't have communities and schools. That is another layer of support that those campuses will be able to have. So they have a person that's on their campus that's able to provide mental health support, small groups, individual counseling as well. So we're looking to partner to make sure that we partner with other entities to try and fill gaps as well.
if you remember 3 years ago, we had service on the east side and west side of the district with Texas State School social work. We actually had 2 social work interns on every campus. And then for whatever reason, Texas State dismantled their program. Part of it was you have to have a supervisor, have 1 social work. At the time, we had 1 social worker, she's at CDC. And so they had some supervisors, but then they completely dismantled their programming. Now it's basically starting from scratch. Remember the board authorized $50,000 in stipends or something to that effect, up to X number of dollars, and we were giving these interns $2,500 to basically cover gas and to help us.
Ms. Hanson had her hand up, and then Ms. Costilla.
I was going to follow up with Mr. Arredondo's questioning as far as, do we have a plan? And you just answered some of it as to the board can authorize the expense for that, but if they're not set up for it, we cannot. I believe in communities and schools, and I do feel that we need one in the east side. And hopefully maybe we can strive for that now. As far as, she mentioned the social workers from the university. I think hopefully maybe we can, again, make contact with them. There's been change in administration there as far as the top level. Maybe some discussions can be held with that new administrative and see whether maybe we can get those social workers back over here again. And I for one, I come from the social work department, and I would have found it very advantageous if I could go into a school from here, whether they're traveling someplace else, to go do my practicum. So I think that there's a lot of potential there. I think we're just gonna have to hopefully maybe follow up with that, especially now that there is a new head person in that department.
We had a
Yes.
strong partnership with them last spring. Money is not an issue on that. They can only support 4. We asked for 5 and begged and got it. Those are the 5 campuses that advocated strongly to use their title money for it, but that every campus has the funds. It's when the program support and our principals are in alignment with that. And I'm hopeful that when we see the good work that's happening, more of our principals will want that this year for their campuses.
Well, and I totally support where you're coming from, Mr. Barton and Mr. Superintendent, but I think at some point in time, it's a matter of, we're going to have social workers in our schools because they are a benefit, greatly a benefit, rather than just leaving it up to that administrator and that campus and say, well, do you want one or not? I think at some point in time, we just need to take the position to say, we're going to have them in our schools.
And revitalizing the relationship with Texas State and their social work department. One thing that was shared was that they have revamped things so that they are able to support. And like Mr. Cardona was sharing, but part of it was the supervision piece. And so now they have someone that will directly provide the supervision and also ensure that our needs are being met. So we had that conversation about how to make sure we align what we are wanting to have with the students that they have that are available. Because sometimes it's just purely numbers, and do they have students that have a readiness to support? And so now they're at a point where they do. And so I have actually today emailed the applications. We'll review them, interview them, and then start placement of social work interns.
Well, I know that they make a lot of, haven't gone through the program, so I know. I know that there is a lot of fanfare regarding the supervision aspect part of it. But when you're out there as a student getting to, especially graduate level, primarily on your own, you go in there and meet with a somewhat supervisor and they just check off. So you're out there. So I'm assuming we're talking about graduate social workers.
Yes.
Okay.
Masters and
Or master, yeah.
Masters and PhDs.
Yeah. And so I think at that point in time, I think it's something that we can really benefit from. We had more, didn't we?
We had 13.
Yeah, and then they cut it in half, right? The following year, they cut it in half because they sent some to
A couple
Kyle.
of things happened.
Students.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, I'll leave it into your hands because I know that you'll nurture that relationship and hopefully we can get some more. Yeah.
Hayes stole some. Well, actually, Texas State chose to take our model and then
To another
give some
school
to Hayes,
district. That's what I heard.
and then Central got some. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Ms. Hanson, did you still have a question?
Yes.
And then Ms. Halsey.
I have a 2-part question. We have counselors at every school. Do we have an additional SEL counselor at every school?
So at the secondary campuses and so it's at Miller Middle School, Goodnight, and then at the high school.
Okay.
And then DAP or Rebound, they have an SEL counselor.
And at the high school, how many total counselors do we have?
So we have a total of 4 school counselors that are supporting students, our SEL counselor, and we have communities and schools.
All right, so 5 counselors plus communities.
Plus
and
communities and schools.
schools. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Halsey?
Thanks. I was having a similar
Hold on,
question.
mute her.
But my understanding was at the high school that we have 4 counselors, one of whom is.
Ms. Halsey?
Yes, you can't hear me. I'm unmuted.
We can hear you.
Okay. So I thought that there were 4 counselors at the high school and one of those 4 counselors is the SEL counselor.
No, there are 4 school counselors and then there's 1 SEL counselor. So it's a total of 5.
And then plus communities and schools.
Plus communities and schools.
Okay. And we have the one social worker that Mr. Cardona referenced at CDC. And where else do we have social workers?
She is the social worker that will provide the supervision for the interns. So the social work, so outside of communities and schools and Ashley Barrett, that's a social worker for CDC. That's it.
So there's one full-time social worker in the district.
Yes, that's at CDC that works with our parenting program.
Okay. And then one of the slides mentioned Texas State school counselors, but I'm not sure. I didn't hear an explanation of who those are, where they are.
Good question. So I've met with our Texas State school counseling program over the summer multiple times. And they have students that need, especially now because of COVID and how placements are working, they have students that need intern hours. And so we're working with them to have LPC interns. But again, it goes down to supervision. So we have one school counselor that has her LPC, and so she'll be able to provide supervision for some LPC interns. Just need to work out the details of where the placement will work and how many she can manage.
Okay, so and what schools that would that be at?
Our counselor with her LPC is at Rebound.
Okay. This is really helpful, and I've got more questions, so thank you. I appreciate the presentation. How do our social and emotional counseling services intersect with our SPED programming?
Good question. So it acts as the same. So when you think about a student that's receiving special education services, they're a student. So they can still participate in social skills groups. So our school counselor, so if a student needs social skills, if our student is a part of a lunch bunch, any student can participate. School counseling lessons, all of our students receive them. So it's all of our students receive the same types of supports. But you will see, so for example, with, let's say, focus support, the focus teacher may provide additional, social skills for that particular student, but our school counselor can still provide additional supports and fit them in wherever they're best needed. If it's needed for a grief group, if they're needed for whatever type of group, they can still provide that support.
Okay, that makes sense. And so I've seen at the high school information coming out from the high school about counseling services available. I've seen that information coming out at the elementary campus level. I might have missed it, but I don't think that I've received any information about those counseling services and specifically the social emotional supports at the middle school levels. And again, I might have missed it. There's been a lot of information that's been put out to parents so far this year, but if we can double check on that and make sure that that's coming out, I think it's really, really, really critical for those middle school students right now.
Yes, because it'll look similar to the same types of supports that were provided when we ended, well, not ended the school year, but when the pandemic began. And so our middle school counselors, they're offering their regular lunch bunch when they have it during the lunch hour. They're small groups, they're teaching school counseling lessons. So the supports are there. But yes, we can double check to just make sure.
I also think it might be a good idea. I know, a lot of the information that I've gotten at the high school level, it's come directly from the principal. At the elementary school, it's come from the counselor via Canvas. I think it would be terrific if your office would put out some sort of notification to every parent in the district that came straight from you, that didn't require like going through the Canvas, right? That just said, here are the resources, here are the numbers, here are the open hours. I think that there's a lot of Canvas emails going out and some things get lost in that. So
that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
So thanks so much. This is really helpful and I appreciate it.
Mr. Redondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. My question is directly related to, students who don't self-identify or whose parents don't refer them to counseling services. In what ways or in what methods do, say I'm a student and I'm habitually talking in class or acting out or having behavioral issues, at what point does it go from like an office referral to an administrator for misbehavior to maybe we need to send them to a counselor to find out why, Mr. Arredondo's acting like this, or if I'm absent consecutively, or, what triggers or metrics are we using, or are there any in which we refer students to counseling services to find out maybe what the underlying cause of some of these issues are?
And that's a good question, because the whole idea is that we remove the idea of a punitive approach. And so when you see that a student is missing class or they're not, or whatever, it's either they're overly actively engaging in the instruction, or they're not, or they're more withdrawn. That's a perfect time for an administrator to pull in a counselor to say, meet with this student, because it's not always necessarily a discipline issue. It's just that there's something going on. And so that's why when I was talking about or speaking to the need for SEL to not just live with one person, so having our teachers to do those daily check-ins, which they're doing, helps them to identify those students to then refer off. So that way we're not missing something. So putting in those measures so that we're able to capture students when they don't necessarily self-identify, because you're correct. Students don't always the behavior is not always just, I need the help. It comes out in other ways. And so partnering with our assistant principals, counselors, especially here, all of our counselors are high school, meaning all of our counselors are paired with an assistant principal. So they can work alongside of each other to help support the students, because we know typically it's not, kids don't come to school with the idea that I just plan to misbehave. That's not the idea of how kids behave. And so there is something going on, and it's important for our school counselors to be able to have access to the students. So being partnered with an AP helps to be able to close some of those gaps and create opportunity for those conversations to happen.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a process for what?
So that's why they're partnered together. And that was why Ms. Presley partnered them together to ensure that they are able to work as a team to be able to support student needs.
Well, the behavior is sometimes just the underlying problem, and it's not the actual problem.
Correct. It's something else. And so utilizing the counselor to be able to have that conversation to say, okay, now tell me what's really going on.
Thank you.
I have more question.
Ms. Cantu.
Oh, Ms. Halsey?
Thanks. Sorry, could you go back and explain a little bit more about the partnership with Dell? My understanding is that service provides counseling, like their therapy sort of counseling services to our students, but I'm not sure how it works.
So how it operates is telemedicine. So Dell Medicine, they identify the medical profession that will provide the support. And so through the counselor, they provide the training for counselors to be able to identify the students that are best suited for the service. And so counselors will be trained on how to identify the students. And even if there's a question, like I said, they offer consultation. And then the counselor will work to then connect the student and the parent to the service. And so it's through telemedicine. They will provide the laptop, they will provide the technology for the counselor to be able to have the session on campus. So parent can be zoomed in, student can be there, and they can provide the consultation where the student never has to go anywhere for that support. But Dell Medicine will train school counselors on how to identify.
So I guess that's part of the question is when you say school counselors, and we've said that there are 4 academic counselors at the high school and 1 social emotional counselor. Is it just that 1 social emotional counselor that's going to be trained in that process?
No, all of our school counselors. So school counselors are school counselors and they serve all of our student needs. So for example, Jan Baker is here right now. She has a caseload of students. She is not going to turn away a student because it's not an academic need. She's a school counselor. She serves all of her students' needs. And so the idea is that if she recognizes that there's a student with a need, she is able to then, through the training, identify, okay, is this a student that's most appropriate? If she's unsure, they provide the consultation. But all of our school counselors supports all of our students' needs.
Mr. Redondo?
Thank you. Ms. Mustafa, you mentioned it, and that's why now I have to ask, what portion of time do our counselors spend on academic needs versus emotional needs, or, what's the breakdown of that per employee?
I can't give you an exact number because every day looks different, but you find that as a school counselor, an academic need can easily be tied to some type of emotional need, and vice versa. Some emotional need can be tied to some academic need. So oftentimes you find that when you have a student within your office, you're talking about credits, you're talking about graduation, and then it comes out that there's this other thing that's going on. So you can easily have a mix of those things happening all within one conversation. And also you can utilize an academic conversation to then meet the needs of a student's social emotional needs. So it's not something that happens all the time in isolation, because we know that there are social things that are happening. Stress from school, stress from home, it could be a variety of things. So most of the time they interplay with each other, and it's not just like a separate thing, but it can be.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that. And I guess to be more specific, anecdotally, when I was in high school, I know a lot of times for academic reasons, my counselor was administering an AP exam in the library or facilitating or acting as an administrator in an art. And so how much time do our counselors serve as co-administrators in an administrative role versus an academic counselor or an emotional counselor? Are we still using counselors to serve as administrators outside of APs?
So when you think about, so you mentioned art. So counselors will participate in an art meeting, but it's in the way of counselors being able to support academic needs. So discussing the 4-year plan, what their graduation requirements look like, ensuring that the student is meeting those types of needs, but not acting as or serving as the art facilitator for those particular meetings.
So we are no longer using counselors as
act as an
administrators.
As in a, like.
Whenever like an AP isn't available to administer a test or to facilitate an art, we're not calling in counselors anymore, or are we still doing that?
As far as I know, counselors are not facilitating arts. Unless Denisha has something different, counselors are not facilitating arts, and they're not acting as assistant principals in the way of coordinating tests and those types of things. She has her administrators that support that.
Okay, thank you.
So going back to the teletherapy, I think that's a great service, but I'm concerned that if we don't have somebody who's on location at the high school, every day, that service isn't going to be as used and as available to students as I think that it warrants. So I can understand why we have an LPC at Rebound, and I think that's great, but can you explain why we don't have an LPC at the high school?
It's not, in order to be a school counselor, you're not required to have your LPC. That was something that she sought out on her own, to have her LPC.
Right, I understand, but I'm saying I think that there's a need at the high school to have additional counseling services available. And I think that in part they'll be made up by the teletherapy, but I think that there's, the need is pretty great. And I think that as the pandemic goes on, the need is only going to intensify. So the more that we can do to support it now and get ahead of it, the better off we are.
Maybe when we advertise for another counselor, you might want to add that
Attach
to
the LPC.
to the information that goes out, so that you're looking specifically for LPCs, because your school certified counselors don't automatically have the LPC.
And also we do have current school counselors that are actively pursuing their LPC as well.
Yeah.
So it's just, but you're right, that would be a great thing to add. And that's something we can work with Dr. Baez to be able to do.
Maybe not necessarily for all positions, but for some of the
Or
positions.
just suggest it. And then as we look through applicants, pulling those that do have their LPC.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you. Very
You're
good.
welcome. Thank y'all.
We're ready for the construction update.
Slide changers stepped out of the room.
You can start talking anyway.
Okay, I'll do that. Board
Here he
President,
comes.
Board of Trustees, Superintendent Cardona, good evening. There he is. I'll be delivering the 2017 bond construction update. The last time I was in front of y'all, we were pushing to get ready for students at De Zavala and Miller Middle School. Aside from a few changes in student drop-off and pickup and some other small items, I feel like we had no major issues. The goal was to minimize the inconveniences to staff, to students, to teachers, and I feel we did that considering the scope of the projects. What we're going to do is we're going to start by looking at the budget. The big item that you'll see on there is obviously the estimated savings. For the last 4 months, we have been tracking about $1 million worth of estimated savings on this project. And you can see it's increased to just over 4 million. As we look more closely, we can attribute that to three factors. The first being the new elementary school, Rodriguez. We are pretty much 99% done with that. We have a couple of straggling expenses that are coming in, but as you can see, we're going to be way under budget with Rodriguez Elementary School. The other significant contributor here is the 5 campus renovation, particularly the 3 elementary schools. We're definitely going to come in under budget. We're still doing the analysis, but it could be in excess of $2 million just for the 3 elementary schools. And then finally, what we did is there was an extensive audit that was done by an outside auditing firm. And it looks like we're going to be reclassifying our retainage And instead of moving that into the estimated total to complete, we're actually going to be moving that into a total booked expenditures. And of course, retainage fluctuates each month. So overall, it's a positive trend. It's going to allow the district to consider other necessary projects in the future. One more note on the budget. The high school and the elementary renovations project, we should be closing those out and have that in front of this board before the end of the year to approve both of those projects. So let's look at Little Middle School in particular. We did do some modification to the student pickup and drop off, as well as setting up a temporary office in the cafeteria and the gym area. And both seem to be working well. We also had to relocate the band hall and the choir room, and that was due to some egress challenges in the event of emergency. But on the flip side, what this has done is potentially allowed Weber to access this space ahead of time and work ahead, as we talked about at last meeting, but we're still evaluating that. Some of the items at Miller Middle School that have been completed, punch list for phase 2, which is the classroom wings. We have a couple of items left, but for the most part, all of those have been addressed. We poured concrete in area D, which is going to be the new admin, new entry area. And then a lot of that rest of the activities is around area F, which is the new band hall, and it's on the south side of the campus. As far as items in the next 30 days, we still have millwork. We do have temporary countertops in the science labs in phase 2, but we are waiting for new millwork to arrive so that can be installed. Courtyard 1, we've got some millstone, landscaping, and irrigation to do. And then, of course, as you can see there, area D, which is a new admin and library, and I'll show you pictures here in a second. Steel erection, the roof decking, exterior framing, a lot of activity going on in area D as well as area F today. As far as the project schedule, we're still tracking April for a completion date for the new band hall, new admin, the entry, fine arts, and the library. Once again, we're going to be pushing for spring break. That's a good time to move with students out of the building. But if we don't make it, we are targeted for April 2nd. And, I'll show you the next couple of slides are the photos. If you look at the photo on the left, it's a bad photo, but if you look at it, that's looking from the parking lot. That building is the new band hall. It has been enclosed. A lot of work is happening behind those walls. And then the other picture on the right is of last week. If you're looking north, that's going to be the new entry, band hall to the left, entry in the middle, and then library off to the right. The other photo, that's the new admin library, September as compared to last week. As you can see, the stills going up. We've got roofing going up on the new library, flooring, decking. As soon as we close that up, you'll see some exterior framing happen in the next 30 days, and it'll start to look like a real building. As far as Disavola is concerned, we did have to swap out the bus loop and the parent or the student pickup and drop off. However, staff and teachers, students have access to the entire campus. They're free to move around the campus with no restrictions. When we look at what's been accomplished there, a lot of work in the, you can go to the next slide, a lot of work in the new admin in the entry area. We got a fire riser that was completed for the fire sprinkler, which granted us the TCO from the fire marshal to be able to access the entire school. Still erected over the new admin and the entry, and then over to the right in the next 30 days. That's the real push. Everything's happening in that new admin, new entry area, flooring, walls, the ceiling grid. And I'll tell you why. Next slide is because we're on track to have all that completed by Thanksgiving. Right around the Thanksgiving time. Wow. And then at that time, we'll swap the bus loop back over to where it originally was. And then student and parent pickup will move over to the new side. The next big phase on there is the completion of the library. That is, as soon as we move the new admin over to the admin, the existing admin area to the new admin, we'll have Bart Nicott go in there and start doing demo and have that library complete by April 30th. And then the next slide is just some photos of The new entry, that's actually the same building, and it's the angle's different a little bit on the photo, but you can see that it's all closed up, and a lot of work is going inside there. And then the next photo is just the halls of the new admin area, and then that's sort of going to be that'll be the student parent pick up and drop off on the new admin side. So just in summary, I can't thank the staff enough at Miller and Zavala. The admin, the teachers, the custodial staff, there's a lot of patience, a lot of work that went in so we could get the campuses ready, but we accomplished that and certainly moved forward on these projects, trying to once again with less inconvenience to the staff as possible. But they're, like I said last time, they're major projects. So.
Questions? Mr. Redondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. This isn't a question. I just wanted to make my colleagues aware that I reached out to Superintendent Cardona in regards to the possible savings of the bond as we wrap up some of these projects. One, I want to give kudos to Mrs. Woody at Mendez Elementary School. And I only say that because that's a school that I drive by all the time because of where I live. But they are doing a phenomenal job of having both English and Spanish messaging on their marquee. It is an older marquee, obviously using the transparent letter slides. And that is something that I would definitely be interested in all ISD campuses having LED signage to allow for multi-language messaging to go out to all of our families. So that was something that I shared with Mr. Cardona that I would like to see us pursue in the future. But again, I just wanted to share that with my colleagues on the board that we had that conversation.
Good idea.
And President Cantu,
Yes.
when I picked my packet up on Friday, and the construction update wasn't in what I got, was it in y'all's that I just missed out? Or
No.
If we could get that maybe in time to make it to the packet, I feel like I'm able to.
We didn't have
It was emailed separately from Mr. Barton, but
Yes, it was.
yeah, it wasn't
Okay.
in the
Today?
over the last week, I think before the board book came out, actually.
Or maybe that's why I
It
didn't see
was before the board.
Okay,
Yeah.
then never mind.
I think Mr.
Okay.
Barton sent us that information.
It was the budget and construction.
Oh, I just
They
thought
were
that was it.
attachments.
Okay,
It was
thank you.
attached.
That shouldn't be a problem in the future, sir. Previously, we had to turn the board book a little bit earlier, so it's prepared for you on Friday, and some of the information you wanted ran right up to that deadline. But now that we're into the school year, we're down to our last projects, I think we can get that in the board book for you.
Awesome.
On pages 30, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead of you.
I just said awesome. That's good. We're ready for our investment report.
On pages 32 and 38 of the board book, we have the quarterly investment and quarterly financial updates. Those were also sent to you on Friday. There's nothing there to present unless you have any questions, but the overriding themes is this first quarter of our budget year. We have not started receiving revenue yet, and so this is where our general fund is stretching until we start receiving our tax revenue. You can see in our investment report that the balances are falling. And financial report, tax revenue in November. And so hopefully in the second quarter, we can start seeing some answers to questions about how our community has been impacted by the challenges that they're facing. And we can see how that will impact the district financially.
Questions? Do you have a question? Any questions? Then we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we take a break?
Yeah, I sure would like one. We're going to take a 7-minute break.
You don't need cookies, right?
I prepared it.
Oh, did you?
But I don't want cake. I just have this.
The child nutrition to me always like their oatmeal cookies. Oh, they're the best.
Yeah, and that's
I've got
because again, I know.
It's been great. I like I'll get it back. Hey, I'm gonna go get mine.
There's more cake.
Oh, gosh.
Please, people take some.
I'll take a piece of cake. I'm gonna take one home.
Anybody need any cleaning supplies?
I'm gonna put mine to go.
I hope so. They probably won't.
I've had it twice, so I bet you
I think that was the whole plan. Is that we're gonna get together, that we're gonna go and eat.
Back up.
There's no water in there.
It's over here.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna tell them for something.
Yeah.
Where I kept it in, you do.
Right, you had the Donald's.
I only
Oh,
served 3 years.
it was so good.
I know you'll wear it.
Yes, I will.
You could hand it down to somebody when they become a board member.
But I mean, like to trade it, you got taken a long read and got
I got the two black nurses. I got the two black nurses in the COVID.
Maybe.
by myself.
Yeah.
Literally no one was in the room. It's just us two for 2 days. Yeah, they did. I didn't get the hydroxychloroquine, bleach, and stem cell research stuff.
Interesting. I mean, when you saw those stories coming out of
No, watching tweeted.
How's the family, John?
I don't know about Zoom, but YouTube.
right now, you know.
Nobody has gotten sick?
These cases here at the markets, but no one's using their assessment like.
Well, we were very fortunate.
Yeah, there's some disconnect there.
There's like a month behind.
Yeah, uh-huh. Well,
Yeah, we're good. We're almost done with this country season. It's about 3 or 6 times.
yeah.
I'll have to do 6:30 practice.
Hey, well, I guess I'll ask you later.
Thanks, Andrew.
I was going crazy. I know I saw it. I know it's oh my goodness.
Say they do something. All the same thing out there.
Is that the right time? Robert, I know?
Yes, 7:30.
It is?
It just feels like.
It just feels like it's 9 o'clock for me. Oh.
It's 7 minutes up yet? Yes. I just picked it at random. They've been bringing napkins with it. I've been bringing napkins in here. Oh, this is.
There's one there.
Way
but
over
I
there.
don't see-
Walsh? For what?
Well, in the cafeteria, I told him that I wanted to last night.
Oh, yeah.
I was so worried about it. He said, they didn't bring them. And I said, well, they better not be bringing them. If they're not bringing anybody to participate, if they know that they've got positive COVID.
The problem is, I was on a conference call with the from Wesley.
Never mentioned it. That's
And they
rude.
knew, and they knew. I mean, they knew.
They have to have known because I purposely left them
I
out.
was like, I was on a conference call with them.
They had to be in close contact, even if they weren't positive.
Well, no, I mean, 3 hours we were on a conference call with E3 Alliance. He never said a word. Like, hey, by the way, all they kept doing was holding up the state championship ball to put it, like, rub it in my face. Talking about
Look,
they're peening
Georgianne,
children who are remote
I
learning
had one right here.
for the world.
Here's yours.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This is good, yeah.
Because I get it,
Yes,
we're
and it-
different,
and it's,
but-
somebody sent it Southwest Education.
Look,
Isn't
I
that
had it
pink?
clipped here and I couldn't find it. I know, I always bring one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're ready? It's 7.
Let's roll.
Oh, we're still waiting on Lupe. Lupe's missing, yeah. As soon as she comes back, we'll get started again. It's cold in there. I know, my hands are freezing.
I'm never, ever cold.
But I'd rather be cold than hot,
Oh, yeah.
honestly.
Oh, Kathy,
Yeah, no, I'm ever
where's
cold.
Sophie's jacket? You can-
Oh, no, I don't think I could touch that. I wouldn't want
She
to.
was so excited.
Let's go.
That
Giving me
was
your
totally
jacket.
surprise.
She's
No.
giving me your jacket.
You ready?
Yes.
I think that's a good idea.
Let's reconvene. I've got 7:43. We're ready for approval of consent items, approval of minutes for regular scheduled board meeting on September 21, 2020, and special call meeting on October 5th, 2020.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda items.
Mr. McLaughlin moves to approve the consent items, and Mr. Arredondo seconds. All in favor?
So-
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't here one of the meetings.
Oh,
601.
6? Did
Mhm.
Ms. Halsey, did you vote?
She did.
6 and 1 abstention. Items for action. Consider approval of 2020-2021 T-Tess appraisers.
I move that we approve.
All
Listed.
Ms. Hanson moves. I'll go ahead and second. All in favor? Ms. Villalpando, you voting? Okay. 7, all opposed, 0. Consideration and approval of additional social emotional counselor at San Marcos High School.
I know this was a trustee item, but does the administration have a position on whether this investment would be useful at the high school?
I think we did talk about it. We actually talked to Ms. Presley about, can you hear me? Academic counselor and or / social emotional counselor, I think is what we wound up talking about. There was talk of another position, but we reached out to Trustee Halsey, and I think she was just going to kind of, if you want to jump in your conversation, but I think
Ms.
listen
Bush-
to the conversation tonight to see how things were going.
Okay.
Ms. Costilla?
Following up on Mr. McLaughlin's questioning, and I was going to ask the same question, and I think they were fairly covering it. School counselors, and I think Ms. Cantu knows that basically those academic counselors, they deal with those academic issues. I know we have one counselor that well, the question now is going to be. A lot of our students are not here, but that doesn't mean that there's not a need. Then the question is this something that we need to, I have no problem with doing that. I know that there's a lot of situations that come up, having worked many years in the past with students, preparing them for higher ed. And I know that there were a lot of emotional or social issues involved. So maybe if she could maybe speak to that and see where we are, or, you know.
Well, and they'll trust me, this group will correct me if I'm wrong, but several years ago, we did reduce the counseling. Mm-hmm. It is disproportionate from AP to counselor. So it's
Right.
something 6 to 4. So when we were having this conversation, Trustee Arredondo alluded to, well, several of y'all alluded to some like asking questions around, do we know what percentage of time? So there's the position piece, but there's also the system piece that Mr. McPherson, one of the assistant principals, and counselor have been working on right now on a product, School Links, that I think in part will help track what it is the counselors are actually doing. It actually gives parents the ability and students the ability to schedule directly with the counselors on their platform and have access. And then I think the counselors can send messages. It addresses the 4-year plans. I think that a couple of years ago, we had a little bit of issues with 4-year plans getting to parents. It makes that electronic. It actually lets parents have access to like an open-ended course deck so that parents can make adjustments. So there is the counseling piece. And Ms. Presley, you weren't in here when we were talking, but I was telling them that we had a conversation about what type of counselor, and that we were going back and forth between academic and our SEL. And so I think they would like to hear, from you, because you live it.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me through this thing? It feels so awkward. I also have our lead counselor here with us who can fill in any blanks that I might leave. For us personally, I would, we need an academic counselor. One of the reasons being is that your academic counselor, and it goes back to what Ms. Mustafa was saying, they do everything, right? All kids belong to our academic counselors. So part of their role is the Tier 1 SEL supports, and then part of their role is the academic supports that they offer our students. Whereas with our SEL counselors, although it is extremely important, and that, please understand that I'm not discounting the role of our SEL counselor, that is what they do. They spend 100% of their time is built around the SEL supports for our students. Whereas your academic counselors are trained to split their time amongst both functions.
So you would prefer, instead of an additional social emotional counselor, an academic counselor?
I would, yes, ma'am.
That would be your.
And I believe amongst our team, they are building a plan to make sure that we continue those supports. And then with adding CIS, we also serve up to 60, individual students, and then also small groups.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu, and thank you, Ms. Presley, to speaking on what you believe are the needs at San Marcos High School. I appreciate Ms. Halsey's request for this, and if a motion is made, I will support encumbering funds to post for an FTE at the high school campus in the counseling department. Obviously, we just came from a break right now, but I know on similar issues, Mr. Cruz has provided guidance that as long as the agenda endeavor to be transparent about the item in which we are voting for, obviously it's talking about approving a position at the high school. So I don't know if someone needs to call one, if it turns from a social emotional counselor to just an academic counselor. But again, whatever that might be, as an individual trustee, I'm supportive of talking about that and potentially voting to allocate and encumber those funds for San Marcos High School. Additionally, I understand that it's a weird time to be hiring, and obviously you're doing the other 10,000 things you want you to do in the midst of in-person and remote learning and all the other things. So I don't know if this conversation becomes more elongated and we ask for Ms. Presley and the staff at the high school to come back to us towards the end of the semester, and she can report back on, what that additional academic counselor will be doing or whatever that looks like, but to get consensus from the board. If people think that this is not the right time or whatever, I'm trying to telegraph that I'm amicable to having the conversations of making it more amenable to my colleagues on the school board to approve this tonight.
I think one of the concerns that Ms. Halsey expressed to me had to do with the fact that we've had some suicides, and because we're dealing with COVID, that those were reasons that she was putting social emotional counselor. But I agree with the position of adding a counselor, not necessarily designating social emotional or academic, and leaving it to our high school principal to decide what is needed. Ms. Costilla?
To some extent, I'm sorry.
Ms. Hanson was next. I'm so sorry.
No.
I was just curious what the cost is, and is there a cost difference for SEL versus academic?
LPC.
Well, the cost for counselor ranges, the average midpoint would be about 72.
Okay.
And that's all.
Any counselor? Okay, thank you.
Because whether they're certified school counselor, LPC, or then they still fall in that mid-range
LMSW, yeah.
for the budgeting purpose.
Thank you.
I think Lupe was first, but.
Okay, Ms. Costilla?
Following up with what you had mentioned, once again, my concern regarding a regular counselor, and you have the information. To some extent, I agree with Ms. Halsey. The issues that we've had, the emotional connections, our counselors way back then, many years back, our school counselors had to deal with academic issues. Maybe it has changed now to where their training is more advanced as to dealing with the emotional issues, social issues that are taking place with students. That's where my concern would be, is to not going with a regular counselor. But once again, I agree with Ms. Cantu that I think we need to leave it up to the expertise as to what you and your staff feel is the most significant need here, whether it is a social emotional counselor, or whether it's something that can be taken care of with adding another school academic counselor. I'm just very uncertain with that, because coming from that background and having dealt with students before, and the issues that come up when you're talking to them about schoolwork, and then there's something else going on.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but once again, I would leave it up to you whether we need to do it now, or whether we want to wait until we get a little bit more information. I would be interested to know, on a percentage wise, how much time our academic counselors are dealing with social issues with their students.
I think, if you don't mind, Ms. Baker could answer that question for you much better than I could. You come to the mic, please. Thank you.
I apologize to everyone in the room for not having my mask.
I feel like COVID carry here. Honestly, every day, I would say that we are dealing with so much that is academic, but we have students who are emailing us, parents who are emailing us, we have students who are Zooming us. The social emotional needs of our students and our community is high. And for that, I understand the thinking of getting one more SEL. And believe me, I agree with that. But I only agree with that if we can get the additional academic. And here's why. Our team of academic counselors, they are incredible. They have heart and they are trained and they are strong social emotional counselors as well as strong academic counselors. If you can give us the extra person as an academic counselor, you will free us to help all of our students doing what we were trained to do, what we love to do, what our hearts led us to this job to do. If you get one social emotional counselor, then I want you to just think about the math. If we're only talking about one person and we have to decide whether that's an academic or an SEL, right now you have one social emotional counselor who is handling 2,400 or 2,380 as of today. If you get a second social emotional counselor, it's still 1,200. The counselors are not great at math, so nobody better be holding me to that. But you get the ballpark. But if you give me one more, at least, academic counselor, now divide that 2,400 by 5 or 6, because now you wrap in the social emotional and you have freed up those resources to give us the time to do exactly what April was telling you that we are trained and ready to do.
President Cantu.
Mr. McLaughlin?
I appreciate the impassioned plea, but I mean, that just hasn't been our experience, right? Over the last 5 years, we have so many, and this isn't addressed to you, Mrs. Baker, so, but just generally, hasn't been our experience, right? We've had a large number of APs and academic counselors, and I see like 2 people moving about, you know, and then we had a complete turnover in our counseling staff 2 years ago, and then we had all new ones, and then we had another turnover this summer. So I'd rather, I mean, I was the second requesting trustee for the social emotional counselor because that seemed to be an emergent need that would require board action outside of a budget process. But now it's morphed into just another body as an academic counselor. I'm not interested in that today. I'd rather that come from administration with a recommendation and a plan for how that would be integrated and how the students would be redivided and what the timing was. There's just not an emergency that calls for us to do that in October. Not just a general academic counselor.
I just wanted to see how we can go ahead and vote on this tonight, but I want to do what administration needs. I don't want it to be a social emotional counsel. Not that I know I understand the theme, but the way she explained it, I'd like to see how we can vote on it and change. We can't vote for this motion.
He was going to check with.
He's not responding.
I think we should just bring it back in November, and it can be broader, and then it can be from Michael or Mr. Cardona and high school staff if they feel that's a need, and they can explain how it's going to be integrated midstream. And then I just don't see, since it's no longer addressing what we put on here, I don't see the urgency to do it this moment.
Mr. Redondo?
Thank you so much, Ms. Cantu. Mrs. Presley, to be quite honest, obviously I've followed your career as an administrator, even when you were outside of the San Marcos CISD. And when you were at Lehman, there was some incidences that led you to talk about, trauma at your campus and how to respond to a student population that was obviously hurting. Can you speak to that work and what programming or what you did there in regards to, I think, what trustees McLaughlin and Halsey are saying is an emergent need in our public school system?
Sure. Leading up to the time when I was there, when I got to that school, the school experienced 5 consecutive years of suicides or accidental deaths of students on their campus. We don't want to get to that space. And so what I was charged with is here is the problem. Of course, there were more students. There were 2,800 students at the time. And we had eight counselors serving our students. We had two CIS counselors, serving our students, in addition to a licensed social worker who was able to, I think Mr. Cardona talked about the model that was used here. We moved it, or we were using it there. And at any given time, she would have up to 8 interns on campus or within the district, and would distribute some out to other middle schools that were in our feeder pattern. For the most part, though, there was no less than, I would say, 4 to 5 on campus at any given time. And it really took that kind of intensive, laborious work on the social, emotional side. And at the same time, with the 8 counselors, and I believe the ratio was 1 to a little over 450-ish. We had to do the comprehensive guidance plan that counselors are trained and expected to do. They had the time and the resources to do it. Where we are right now, and I'll just be, if I can be frank and honest, and sorry, Superintendent, we have 4 counselors in our academic, on our academic team, who also are receiving the phone calls and quite frankly, keeping our students and parents engaged and supported, because one person, as Ms. Baker stated, can't support 2,400 kids. And then also, in addition to all of the academic work that they have to do, that the SEL counselor cannot help them with, because that's not what she's trained to do. We're right on the brink of losing 2 out of the 4, because at any other space where they've come from, other high schools in our area, the ratio was not 1 to 600 as it is now. The ratio was 1 to 450-ish, which is similar to what schools in the area have done. So we're ready to make the transition. We actually need to make some changes soon. My fear is that the 4 counselors that we have will be down to 2.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Presley. And as someone who has personally gone through the process of doing trauma work, right, to overcome suicidal ideations or issues with addiction or mental health, it is very, very exhaustive work. And so to ask a team of 4 or 5 who have the charge of, 2,400 students to not only do the academic work, but to also say respond to the challenges that these students and their families are now facing because of COVID-19 and all of the things, I can't imagine. And so you speaking to, obviously Lehman had several hundred more students in San Marcos High School, about 400. But again, just given the breakdown of the 8 counselors that were on the ISD side, and then the 2 communities and schools employees that I guess were offered through that program. And then, well, you list I'm sorry, I was trying to write them down as you were speaking, but it was 8 counselors, 2 CIS counselors or social workers.
Correct.
And what else was there at the campus?
One licensed social worker.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was able, because she was a licensed professional, she was able to serve as an advisor, kind of like, I think we said Miss Barrett was a supervisor, for interns from Texas State.
Okay. And again, and so if this is delayed tonight, I understand the rationale from some of my colleagues to do that, and I'm supportive of that. But I would hope that at the November meeting that we would see a recommendation or a proposal brought forward by the high school and the administration to address these needs. I know, Madam Board President, you and I off the dais have talked about best practices when it comes to the ratio of counselors to students and how, I mean, there are professional organizations that make these recommendations of what it should look like. And it is not 4 counselors for 2,400 students. And so personally, selfishly, I hope that somebody makes the motion tonight because there's no guarantees that I'm going to be here next month. So I'd like to see something get done. But I do also understand if people want to wait until November. But either way, I'm ready tonight to allocate some resources where there's obviously significant need.
Ms. Halsey?
Thanks. I did double check the recommended ratio from the American School Counselor Association, and it's 250 students to 1 counselor. So we are, far away from that. I'm also concerned because we haven't yet seen the results of the student survey that was conducted last year. And I think, even that is, I'm nervous about what that says, but I also think that the situation since that survey was conducted is so radically different now that I'm increasingly concerned about our student body and increasingly concerned about the burnout of our counselors and our other teachers. So I'm in favor of moving quickly. I think that having communities in schools and the additional supports that we've discussed tonight begins to build a more robust support system. But I think that, there's not, that we can't do too much at this moment, frankly. And I'm happy to defer to the discretion of Ms. Presley and Ms. Chapman Mustafa in terms of how those staff positions would be best filled. But I would like to also see us think about resurveying students soon. I know that we just put something out today or yesterday about students participating in a Texas state survey about school safety. I don't know if that is intended to take into consideration social, emotional, and behavioral concerns also, or if that's really about a physical safety space. But I think resurveying kids right now about how they're feeling is important because I'm afraid that if we don't, this is going to get worse and worse. And so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the hiring of 2 new counselors for the high school to be with qualifications determined by administration.
Second.
I didn't think we could make a new motion, change this one without either tabling it or voting on it as it is. Am I correct?
Correct.
We can't.
That's a Juan Cruz opinion or that's
We're waiting on Juan Cruz. What I think we can table it, go on and take care of C, D, and E and come back and discuss that. And maybe by then, Mr. Cruz would have responded to changing it. But once a motion is written a certain way, we can't change it on the dais.
What's an agenda item?
Yeah.
If it was written more broadly, I mean, I think.
I'm okay. Well, if Ms. Halsey withdraws her motion.
What the agenda item says is an additional social emotional counselor at San Marcos. And I think that what Ms. Presley and Ms. Chapman Mustafa both clearly demonstrated is that even our academic counselors are also in charge of social emotional pieces. So I don't think, the wording doesn't say somebody who has an LPC or is strictly this. It says counselors that support social emotional learning. So I think the hiring of 2 counselors at the discretion of admin and those people seems to me to fall into it. But if we need to check with Mr. Cruz, that's fine.
If it was agendized to add 2 full-time people at the high school as administration sees fit, that's a lot different agenda item.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if it was close, I think we could just blur our eyes and do it. But I don't.
Madam Board President,
We could
obviously
vote
as
on
the
this if you
chair.
want. I'm sorry?
Obviously, as the chair, Madam Board President, you can table this item yourself. And then you can delay it till the end of the meeting because I'm assuming that the incentive conversation is going to be quite lengthy. So I'm sure there's more than enough time to hear back from
Let's go ahead and table it for right now and move on to our C, D, and E, and we can come back before we adjourn to look at that.
I don't have a problem with that.
Are you okay?
I'm okay with that to table it for until we talk regarding the other items.
Okay.
And then we come back to it.
Item C, resolution adopting one-time employee retention incentive payment for all district employees through 2020-2021 school year.
Ms. Cantu, I move that we adopt this with the payment in December at the amount of $500 per person and the chance for the board to look at considering it again in the spring, once we know what those finances look like. My understanding, Mr. Barton, this would cost the district $600,000?
Yes, ma'am. We have approximately 1,200 employees right now.
Okay, that was my understanding. Anyway, I think it's important in December to, make this payment, to thank all of our employees for their hard work and dedication, for our students, their families, and the community. I wish it could be more, but again, like I said, we could possibly look at an additional stipend in the springtime.
I'll second your motion for $500, even though the motion itself does not have an amount, but we can toss that around.
Resolution.
I don't know who had their hand up first. Ms. Capando?
Oh, okay. My question is that I read that the payment, of course, you mentioned would be made now, but there's a clause in the wording of this whole proposal that if they don't complete or if they leave or something before the end of the period that we're.
For the end of this academic year.
School year, I guess.
The school year.
So then they have to pay back. So what, okay, my question is, why don't we pay them at the end of the school year?
You can pay them whatever you choose. The design, and this comes from our council, it was to do it at mid-year because of some of the challenges that people are facing now. And we could, as it was described, we could do this again at the end of the year. And again, the guidance from our council was the appropriate way to do this is as a retention incentive. So we have to link it to finishing the school year.
The school year, okay.
Okay. Did you have your hand up, Mr. Redondo?
Yes, Madam President. So just to understand Trustee Hansen's motion correctly, so a custodian making $11 an hour and a contracted employee making over $100,000 is going to get the same $500 amount. Is that correct?
Yes, all employees would receive the same amount. It would have.
So whether you're making.
It would have a greater benefit, I would feel, for those making the lower amount. When you look at percentage of their compensation.
But you think we're at risk of losing our six-figured employees as well, and they need a retention incentive?
To thank them, not that this is.
I mean, it's a retention incentive, though.
Exactly.
So it's to retain employees.
Correct.
And so personally, you think that our six-figured employees. I don't think we should
exclude anybody. I think all employees should receive it. And same amount for everyone, because I think everybody is just as important.
Ms. Halsey, did you have your hand up? Ms. Halsey?
Yeah, I'd really like to see us increase that amount by $500 so that it's $1,000 to each employee in December. And I'd also be amenable to considering it later in the year again. CISD just did another raise for all of their employees. So again, I'm concerned about our employee burnout. I'm also concerned because I've talked to a number of teachers who have been back in person with students in their classrooms. And, as ideal as we want the 50% to be, obviously some classrooms are more than 50% of the capacity. I think everybody's working really hard trying to do their best to maintain social distancing and mask wearing. But mask wearing all day, every day is really exhausting. It's really hard, especially when those teachers are teaching both online and in person. I've talked to a number of teachers who have broken down, who've talked to me about what's going on in their classrooms. They're crying. They're concerned that, the testing is good when it happens, but that they've had students that have left campuses, and because those students aren't then getting tested, then they're not being contact traced, right? Because if the student doesn't get the test, if it doesn't report as a positive confirmed case, then the contact tracing isn't happening, is my understanding. And that, you know, the requirements for the student to come back are really at the discretion of the parent. So I think that, you know, employees are really, really trying their best to make the best of a terrible, horrible situation. And the more that we can do to show them our support and to show that we appreciate that they're going above and beyond. You know, I think for teachers who are working with the Canvas system, both in person and online, my understanding is it takes hours and hours and hours outside of the regular school day to upload the content. So they're spending evenings and weekends, you know, not just uploading the content, grading the content. I think it's a really like insurmountable challenge that we have placed before our employees, and they're rising to the occasion. They're doing it. They're working really hard at it without complaint. And I think that this is a gesture that would go a long way. So.
Ms. Castilla?
I'm trying to, in years past, haven't we given out what was considered then like a Christmas bonus or something during the middle of the year that wasn't really tied to retention? I just feel like whatever, I think we're putting a lot of things into that rather than just saying, we're going to give you $500 or whatever it is. And I think Ms. Hanson added to that, possibly maybe review our financial status and then maybe give them another 500. So I'm trying to understand that because in the past, we've given them a bonus in December, right? Without no ties to nothing else, without how much you're making or anything. It was just a flat amount out that was given out to employees.
Not in the 5 years that we've been here.
Maybe it was prior.
And sometimes a resolution
I have
could
no
have been worded
idea,
differently.
but I know that we gave some bonus. I mean, we gave an amount and.
A one-time pay is usually how
I'm
it's
having
worded.
a hard time that we're connected this amount or whatever amount we might decide to COVID and going on. Yes, everybody's working hard. I think our administrators, our custodians, I think everybody is working, has put a lot of hard work given what has transpired. I'm not trying to minimize anybody. I've been down in the bottom of the totem pole. I used to work in the kitchen. I used to clean tables, so I know that. But I was just thinking on a broad way of giving somebody, hey, we're going to give you $500. Christmas is coming up. It's been hard on anybody. And then maybe we'll give you another one given our circumstances. So explain that to me, because I know we've done it in the past. And why are we having such a hard time maybe dealing with it this time?
I can't explain other than when the motion was shaped at agenda prep, this is what our council provided to us as the appropriate way to do it. So this is the way the motion was designed. This is the way the item was designed. I do think you can come back in the spring with the same type of intention and do something if that was your choice. Mm-hmm. And it just as you could do it now.
Yeah.
Mr. Redondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Similarly to Trustee Costilla, I think there is, at least in my mind, a difference from we know our teachers and staff at all levels and all departments and all pay scales have gone above and beyond what when we hired them a year ago, their expectations were for the 2020-2021 school year. So as an individual trustee, I would really hope that we could craft a motion tonight that all ISD employees would see something immediately on their next paycheck, not waiting 2 months until December, because obviously they're going through the ringer right now. So I would like to see something come out of tonight's meeting that would be immediate relief or immediate financial, benefit to them as of right now. If there was something else later that was connected to them staying through the end of the year that was provided in December, I would be supportive of that as well. But again, I think it's not just about retaining them until the end of the school year. Like, I don't think some of our staff are going to make it to Christmas after talking with some of them, like our teachers in particular. So that's where I am on this motion. I'm going to vote in favor of it. That doesn't mean we're going to leave this item, because I hope other people are going to offer subsequent motions as well. But again, I think there's a big difference between compensating employees for what they've gone through thus far, and then also compensating them or providing an additional incentive to stay with the ISD through the duration of the academic year.
Did you have your hand up, Ms. Halsey?
Only to say that I agree with Mr. Arredondo. You know, I will support this, but I don't think it's adequate. So.
Anyone else? Ready for the vote? All in favor? Seven. All opposed, 0. So the motion carried. Discussion and possible action pertaining to early notification incentive for SMCISD employees.
Good evening, Madam President and Board of Trustees.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Good evening. The possible action pertaining to early notification, that is what we normally do, what we do yearly, where we provide early notification incentive. The board has approved those in previous years. And basically the idea would be open up the window or extend the window. So pushing that through for the incentive at the end of the year by giving early notification. That's what this was. Different from the retention. When there was conversation about that, I just thought I'd bring that forward and explain the difference if needed.
In the past, we've had the early notification incentive for people that are going to leave us in March. We get those notifications so that you can start interviewing for the vacancies.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so explain how this would take part for current early notification incentives.
It's for the end of the school. They have to work their calendar. There's the end of the school calendar. Whatever their calendar work day is. For teachers, it would be the end of the school year. For other employees, it's a different date.
I don't understand.
Ms. Hanson?
And this can't be just for retirees. This has to be for everybody.
Yes, it's resignations regardless of,
I
yes.
just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
President Cantu, is
Mr.
this still
McLaughlin?
Ms. Castillo's agenda item?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and we discussed this some at agenda prep, and I didn't understand a clear rationale for why we would do this in October after agenda prep, and I'm still looking for it.
Okay. The interest there is from some teachers that are already at the retirement position right now. That because of COVID, they really much rather just retire. They didn't take advantage of their retirement opportunities when that was presented in March. So they're saying, can we now retire early? Can we leave, like, if y'all approve anything, if it was something for the board to consider, would it be possible for me to leave in October and November or whatever it would be? And this is why I brought it in for discussion to see where the board stood and what would be the ramifications for that. And this is something that HR presented us with as far as maybe the cost that it would entail and maybe the number of employees. But once again, it cannot be offered just to those retiree people. It has to be offered to other individuals that meet the criteria of having worked for the school, for this district for 5 years. Once again, I had asked, I had a note here. So you mentioned here that the recommendation regarding that would be to maybe extend extend it to January for board approval, possibly, instead of waiting to March. Is that correct? Is that what I'm
So
saying?
it's basically what the early notification is, what we do every year. And that we do that for that reason, for budgeting and
So you would
staffing.
say to extend it until, for the board to act on anything would be until until January. Is that what you're saying here?
Yes, or we
And
can
so-
do it in December and say,
So-
we know that there's a by extending the window, some folks, when they go to spring break, it's like, okay, I'm ready, I want to retire.
Right. But there are some employees now that are within the retirement age that don't maybe have a desire to remain beyond October or November or whatever. And so my question in regards to that was, and you did address that, was that, okay, so what does it do to us here? What does it do to the employee? You know, are these people that are saying, I'm ready to go, I don't want to stay, are they losing anything other than maybe possibly another year that they can show that they're working for their benefits? Or what, how does that work?
No, so should somebody decide, again, it's going to depend on what position and when they retire and when they make their year. Typically, it's in January when you make your year for the year. But what's there is, and legal counsel says, early exit is, it's unlawful. We can't do early exit.
So if that was a possibility, how many teachers are we looking at that maybe are at a time frame where they can just say, well, I'm ready to leave? Retire, shall we say?
So, yeah, so in years past, we've had, I'm predicting about 12, but, some folks, they may have not been in education this whole time, so they have to make their year. So it really, honestly, it can vary.
And following up on Mr. McLaughlin's concern the last time when we had the discussion regarding, well, where is that going to leave with in the classroom, filling in that vacancy? I, for one, I just wanted this brought for the rest of the board to get feedback from the rest of the board and see where we might stand on that position, because I think he brought up a very interesting point, is that, which I know that I had talked to the superintendent about also. So where does that put us regarding if we have 12 teachers that are saying, I'm ready, I don't have to wait till January or whatever, I'm ready to leave right now. So where does that put us?
So we do look at December graduates for the pool, but the pool is going to be limited, at this time.
So we might have classrooms without a teacher, with us up instead, until such time that we have a pool to fill those rooms with.
There's a small pool. There'll be a bigger pool in December. When we have graduates, but again,
for the interim, we would have some classrooms without a teacher and with a sub.
Well, we would hope to fill those. There are folks out there that we would hope to fill those as soon as possible. Yes.
Do you anticipate a positive outcome as far as filling those positions, or possibly until the first of the year?
Your chances are higher at the first of the year because of the December graduates, but there are folks that are, there are pools, there are certified folks, there are lists of certified people that are looking for positions, yes.
Well, we're already having to deal with Zoom classes that a lot of students are having a problem with to begin with. I'm not sure how that's going, whether that's a large number, which is already an impediment for the learning process. So I'm not sure whether not having a teacher, having to depend on a sub, whether that's something that will be impacting our student population. If it's, if it's 12 or even less than that. And if these employees were to wait till January, because you mentioned that, could they leave in January?
So one of the things that we have said and we have done is obviously if folks are coming out of their contract early, we're not making a recommendation to sanction certifications. And so if the question is, could they leave and nothing happened? No. Yes. We've had a couple folks leave, and out of their contract and not made a recommendation to sanction.
Well, there are some teachers though that can leave now without really feeling any major ramifications.
Right. Or making their year,
The only
their
thing,
extra
the other
year.
side of that coin is the fact that that classroom is empty. That's what I'm hearing.
Mr. Redondo, you had a question?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. I guess it's more of a comment, if you will. During what I would assume is the most chaotic and uncertain academic year in anyone's memory, I cannot and will not vote in favor of incentivizing teachers to leave mid-year or give them some type of incentive to notify us that they're going to leave mid-year. If anything, I'm more interested in literally giving them like a Winn-Dixie bag full of money to stay and put up with all the things that we're putting them through. If it's talking about the climate in which they're working in, this board, required all staff to come back. But now one of my colleagues is talking about how due to COVID-19, some teachers want to retire. And I get that, I understand that, and I hear it each and every day from staff. But then let's address the workplace environment in which they are wanting to retire mid-year versus incentivizing them to retire mid-year or to leave or to resign early. I mean, we just had an agenda item in which we were trying to retain employees. And I think it speaks to the fact that everyone on this board knows that it's tough. But again, I don't know why we're ignoring the reasons why some of these staff are coming to us and saying that they just can't stay, right? I mean, we know it's difficult. So again, I'd be much more interested in improving their working conditions and the environment in which we are asking them to operate in. Whatever that looks like, I'm open to, including financially incentivizing them to stay and not leave. And so I don't think it's just offering them money. It obviously involves the workload in which that we're putting on staff and all the other things. So I find this conversation really bizarre that we are acknowledging that people want to leave, but we're not talking about why they want to leave. But that's just me.
Ms. Cantu, this was an opportunity to bring to this dais the discussion as has been presented to me by more than one teacher, more than one individual, several. I don't see it as incentivizing individuals to leave. I see where they're at, that they have their years in the school district. So I'd like to go ahead and retire. I didn't retire when I was supposed to, but now given all this, I'd like to go on and retire. My concern with that is the classroom more than anything upon their departure. They're going to leave either way.
Yeah.
Either way, they're going to leave, whether they leave now or whether they leave in the spring, whenever they're supposed to leave, they're going to be gone. It's not a matter, I don't know what the COVID situation is going to be because it seems to be the driving force in regards to that. So, whether it's done here, whether it's done now, it's not. Once again, I do see the concern that Mr. McLaughlin had brought up regarding changing teachers, and the fact that we will now have maybe subs that will be in the classroom. I don't want that. I really have no desire to consider this discussion for action at this point in time. If these individuals, it's been discussed here, they can hear the feedback from the rest of the board.
Okay.
If they have any issues, if they want to go, they're going to have the opportunity. If the board wants to put it on for action in January, that's fine. They can proceed at that point in time. But I have no desire to continue for action on this.
So you're withdrawing your?
Yes, because once again, it's just discussion and possible action. So I'm just leaving it at discussion.
Okay, Mr. McLaughlin, did you want to say something before?
I want to jump on this general idea of how can we make things better? Because I think that's the right question. I mean, besides the idea, and I don't know, Mr. Barton, can we do the $500 and win Dixie bags? Is that even an option? No. Okay, because that sounded kind of fun. But as to like making it better, that's not
Shout out
just,
to English teachers back in high school.
that's not just the SMCISD problem. That's just a problem in the profession. I talked to a friend who teaches in Hayes over the weekend, and she was emotional and upset. And so this is the hardest thing she's ever done in her life. She's working twice as much as she's ever worked. I mean, it's what the system's asking of teachers everywhere across the state. And in other professions too. I mean, I'm a lawyer, and it's hard sometimes too, but now it's like doing it on ice. Everything's just more challenging. Everything comes quicker. You're not, and so I know it's that way and throughout and for all of our staff. And so I would welcome any idea of how to make it better. But I think that starts with some of the things the district's already doing to keep teachers safe and to keep kids home when they're sick, and more of that I would support. A broader testing regime for more students and more staff, where we could identify kids that were sick and then trace and keep kids away from school that had been exposed. I think ultimately if our teachers felt as safe as we can make them, that would relieve a lot of anxiety that's crowding into already their increased workload. But that's not a problem that we can invent a solution to. Everyone's having that trouble. We're getting very little help or guidance from the state. We're just out here on our own. So there's nothing on the agenda for this, and maybe that's something that we can talk about at agenda prep or next month. But I mean, I'm for any idea that would make it better and safer for the kids and the faculty and relieve the stress they're all going through. And whatever the costs come to that, we can consider. But I think ultimately, I mean, the $500 is a nice recognition that this is hard and everybody appreciates $500. But I think they would more appreciate a normal job and a safe environment. And that's not a knock on the administration, because that's something they can't unilaterally deliver. But that's what we really have to figure out a
Keep
way.
in mind that this population that was interested in this is that population that is older, that are saying, we're gonna leave anyway. And so whether it's bizarre or not, like Mr. Arredondo alluded, that's for them to determine whether it is a bizarre request or not. We have discussed it and we had talked about it, and now we just they can just decide whether they're gonna go forward or not in January and just pack their bags and leave, or whether things will get brighter here overall, health-wise, and it'll be a lot better and they stay on, so.
Well, I hope they do. I mean, I hope everyone does, because it's terrible for everybody and everywhere. And there, hopefully it'll get better, and in November or December, it'll all be gone. But it's rough.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Dr. Barton on a survey he made. I had a conversation with him, and I asked him if he would send out a survey to the hourly and ask them, what else could we do to make them feel safer during this COVID time? And he did send it out, and he did have some results, and I'm sorry, I didn't ask you to prepare that. But if you have that information with you, that's one way, is to survey our staff, because it seemed like a lot of our hourly were getting sick because they're having to clean up, or they're having for some reason they were getting sick. So I asked him to do that survey, and I know that he has the results from that.
Thank you for bringing that up. We did that in the summer to learn from our employees who came back first. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. There's always people who have some uncertainties and some anxieties, and they were able to express that. But we asked questions like, did your supervisor change the routines to care for your health? Do you feel like you're able to keep an appropriate social distance? And are the people around you keeping an appropriate social distance? A short 5 or 6 questions, and then 2 open-ended questions about their ability to seek information and what their ideas were. We reviewed it in cabinet, and we took those as a lot of celebrations and lessons learned and guidance for when we brought back teachers. And I think that was a big part of our success, was allowing the voices of our hourly employees to craft how we supported our salaried employees when they came back to service, but I don't have the numbers with me this evening. I'd be
I'm
happy
sorry,
to share some of that with
I didn't ask you to come
you.
prepared for that, but
I think I
I
emailed
thought-
it to you. I'll dig it out and I'll send it to the entire board.
yeah, you did send
sweet.
the results to me, and I felt like this is reaching down into individuals, asking them, what else can we do so that you feel safer on our campus? And I would love to see that done for teachers and the other staff. But one of the questions you asked was, were you given a mask? And because some employees had said they didn't have masks or whatever.
A lot of people were uncertain about the type they were getting. And again, this was back when we brought people back in June, and there was a great deal more uncertainty. The opportunities were always 100%, almost always, seldom and never. And almost 95% of the time, it was always or almost always. And then where it was an opportunity, and again, I reviewed this with my team, to go back and communicate with their teams about who feels like they need some clarification or how can we improve. And again, that just kind of helped us jumpstart into September and October.
You wanted to say something before because you're getting ready to do your budget amendments, right?
All right, we have one budget amendment and it's in support of item
All right,
B.
wait, before you start, did you have a?
I just wanted a clarification. When we do the early notification in March or April, let's say I put in an early notification, do I still have to work through the rest of the school year?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to check. Thank you.
Anybody else before we go on to the budget amendment? Okay. Approval of October 2020 budget amendments. Thank you, Mr. Barton. Dr. Barton.
We have one budget amendment on page 46, and it is support of item B. So it is to fund the possible position you're considering at the high school. And so I don't know if you want to go back to that conversation or if we're coming back to that at a later date.
Go back to that.
And then come back to this? Okay, yeah, because that was tied into it. It was 80,000 or something, 80.
With benefits, yes, I believe Dr. Baez cited the midpoint in the 70s
So
and then benefits
now
brings it to 80.
have we heard from Juan?
Well, I have heard from Juan, but we're in the middle of having a conversation.
We want to take a little break
Yes.
so that he can finish up the.
We approved this one
And
in an agenda prep at the other one in 2 weeks and just go forward rather than.
I think that I am personally ready to vote on a social emotional.
And you
And-
can add the other one at your agenda prep meeting.
But
let's go forward with doing it.
we're going back to our consider an approval of additional social emotional counselor at San Marcos High School.
Do we, so just
McLaughlin?
as a matter of where we sit in rules and such, do we have a motion and a second right now, or was that withdrawn, or?
We have a motion a second, but it's.
So we have to
it
vote
was
the
never- it's
two?
not
We
on
weren't
the
sure if
agenda.
it complied with our agenda item. I think that's what we were trying to
We
find
were
out.
checking with Mr.
To see if we could change it.
Mr. Cruz, that if we changed it to two counselors, it needed to be a different motion.
Yeah, I understood
If we
that.
change it to academic counselor, that would also be a different motion.
Yeah, but I think we're having like a secondary discussion that if this motion goes away, then can we just straight up approve one SEL counselor? And I would be in support of that. But I think first we have, because since there's a motion with the second, we have to find out
But
if.
this was the motion and the second about this one.
No, it was. it
No,
was
they
for
want two
counselors.
non-specific counselors at the high school.
Ms. Halsey's motion had to do with two counselors.
Oh, okay. Well,
Didn't you, Ms. Halsey? Yes? It was for two counselors,
Right.
and that's when we stopped the discussion because this motion only shows one.
Right.
And now, what did he say?
He hasn't said much.
Yay or much?
I mean, I can't promise.
Can Ms.
yeah.
Halsey take back her motion and we can do the one that's here and go forward and then just add the other one at the next meeting, at the agenda prep? Can we do
Ms.
that?
Ms. Villalpando?
Well,
There you go.
but the amendment's only for one, right?
Yes. No, there's no
The original
amendment.
one is,
The,
for
the,
two, but it's not.
the
even-
original one states social emotional counselor only. Ms. Halsey's motion
I'm
said
talking
to,
about the amendment
The
on the.
budget amendment.
oh, you're talking about the budget amendment. The budget amendment was for the 80,
Only one, so, okay, so.
it's only for one.
Go back to that.
So
Ms. Halsey?
I really think that we're applying different rules than we've ever applied before. We've changed budget amendment amounts. We've changed the wording on the way that things are agendized and what the motion was that we actually voted on. So this feels really strange to me. And right now I'm not withdrawing.
Can we just
Okay.
take a 5-minute break to where Mr. Cardona can verbally talk to Mr. Cruz and we can get some resolution on this
Mr.
versus
Fondo,
a
did you
text
have
back
some-
and forth thing?
Only
You have
the-
something, I'm happy to take a 5-minute break. I don't care.
I don't, well, let's wait what Juan says, but my problem is that the way this reads, that's what we need to vote on.
That's what we need to vote. That's
Right.
very correct.
So I don't think it can carry anyway. Why don't we just vote the motion and then we can make a new motion?
It's up to Ms. Halsey to withdraw her motion.
No,
or
she doesn't want to, so let's just vote it.
Oh, vote on the two?
Yeah,
But it's not on
But
our.
it's not on the
It's not on
you can
the
vote
agenda.
against it if you want. I mean, but otherwise we're just running around in circles.
We have to vote on what's posted on the agenda.
Yeah.
I guess the strategy though, Mrs. Costillas, is if you disagree with the intent of the motion, this is a creative way of voting against the two counselors by
No,
saying
I
you're voting
know, I don't
against
think it
it.
has anything to
because
do
it's
with the
posted.
strategy. It's from following legal process here as to what voting on what's posted on the agenda. That's all it is.
What do you have?
I don't have anything. I'm gonna go call Juan Cruz.
Please.
We
can either
just
take
3 minutes or something.
Let's,
so-
let's take a 3-minute break.
Was there a second on whatever Ann said?
Yeah,
Yes,
Mr. Arredondo.
Mr. Arredondo seconded, but her motion is not written down in our agenda, so I don't know that we can
So-
legally vote.
What are we doing?
We're taking a 3-minute break. We're taking a 3-minute break because we can't vote on something that's not on the agenda. Dr. Barton, I think Ms. Hanson had a good point. She didn't know that you had finished your doctorate.
Yes, ma'am.
Congratulations.
Yes,
Congratulations.
congratulations. Oh, she gave him promotion, but I didn't know you.
I heard from this little birdie over here.
You were doing weekend hours and you were doing COVID too, all at the same time?
I'm being at the football games on Fridays.
Congratulations.
Your wife was doing what? Oh, okay. That's wonderful. Well, it's good to
And
have somebody.
so that means all of our assistants.
She needs a doctorate designation.
Oh, he's in the home stretch.
Yeah, he's finishing up his dissertation. He's on dissertation. But he's a smart man to hire such smart people.
So what is yours?
I think that's a credit to, that's a credit to the superintendent for hiring people that are so smart, that are all doctorates now.
Doesn't match with how I'm active.
I mean, we have a doctor of jurisprudence.
Yes, we do.
So
I hope you turned it off.
And see there, I enjoyed it, and then I went ahead and followed it with the.
What is his name?
So it all just worked out.
We're all over here on break.
You like my Winn-Dixie bag reference, huh?
CCMR and helping school districts be more efficient.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Like
I-
at the
I
end of the
think-
day, end of a Friday, everybody's going, grabs their
When
bag.
she said that, I was like,
With
what?
the school fuel bag?
We'll talk about it, we just get stuff done.
No.
When?
That's a lot, that's a big accomplishment.
Oh, this is my own mask. The mask he
No,
left me
the
for my
ones that
birthday
the one
was
that I
that
got
one.
Clem was a Rattler mask from K&D's, yeah.
Because I'm going to wear it to the football game.
K&D's, it's a little store off LBJ. Yeah, they got some cool stuff there.
I thought we could only vote on what's on here.
Well, I mean, she's made a motion, you got a second.
It's a vote on the motion. You said vote on the motion. You can do that.
Vote on the Halsey motion.
We can vote on the
Vote on it.
motion that she made?
Doesn't mean,
And it's legal, is what Juan said?
Yes, that's what I went and asked,
It
yes.
doesn't need like a Supreme Court decision or
No.
So we're
or
okay,
anything.
even though it's not.
Correct, because it's an open session.
all right, let's go back.
We'd have to change the budget amendment if it passes. Yeah,
We're going to reconvene?
So we can finish and leave.
correct.
Let's reconvene.
I got it on record.
So we're going to vote on Ann Halsey's motion with a second with Arredondo that if you can repeat your motion, please.
Gladly, I am moving that we authorize the superintendent to hire 2 additional counselors at the discretion of administration to determine their qualifications and titles ASAP.
Second.
And you've got a second?
Mr. Arredondo seconded, yes.
Second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm just generally opposed to not having it tied to the need of social emotional. We have all sorts of academic advisors. We've got people in college and career readiness. We've got all sorts of folks serving in those roles all over the place in this campus. So it seems more like
You have 3 gear up coordinators.
3 gear up coordinators. It seems the need social emotional. That's what we're all worried about. And so I would rather target these funds, specifically target them to the need. So that's why I'm not maybe 2 is the right number, but I don't like the general nature of just, wherever folks see fit. I mean, so I'm opposed.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, just to clarify, Mr. Carona talked with Mr. Cruz. This is allowable within the bounds of the way the agenda was posted. Is that correct, Mr. Superintendent?
Here, let me get the exact time. At 8:46, I had a conversation with Juan Cruz regarding this action item. And I specifically asked him, can the board change a motion? The current motion reads, consider and approval of an additional social emotional counselor at San Marcos High School. He said yes.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that, I'm in favor of the motion as stated by Trustee Halsey. If it passes, great. Additionally, however, I would be interested in hopefully receiving an update from the administration, the high school at our agenda preparation meeting in November of how, if these positions were approved, how they will be structured at the high school, in particular, in what ways, hopefully, those additional positions will be used to provide some of the relief that we're looking for when it comes to social, emotional, trauma, all the things. And November 1st agenda preparation meeting, if there were any other additional requests to become more in alignment with the National Association of School Counselors when it comes to San Marcos High School as an individual trustee, I would be interested in that as well.
So,
Ms. Costilla?
what does the motion read? How is it reading? Has it been changed?
Yes, 2.
Okay, so where are we with motion?
You're voting on 2 counselors to be
Yes, that was
determined
the
by
original one.
administration.
That's it. 2 counselors, right?
Correct.
Was her motion social, emotional, and
It's just 2
academic, or
counselors.
2
just
counselors to be determined by superintendent.
By the administration.
And so what was the amendment to that?
There was
no amendment.
What is the other motion?
There's not a
I remember
second.
hearing that.
No, the
There's not
other
a
motion
second.
was the original motion.
Okay, so nobody said anything about that.
There's
There's only one motion on the floor.
There's only one motion, and it's for 2 counselors
Okay.
to be determined by administration. Anybody else comment?
Ms. Cantu? Ms. Cantu? I would be amenable to amending my motion to specify 1 social and emotional counselor and 1 additional academic counselor if Mr. McLaughlin feels like he could go along with that
At the high school.
at the high school.
I mean, I would be more inclined to support that. I haven't thought through it.
Okay, let's move.
Okay, then I'm moving to amend my motion that we specify that for the additional hire of 1 social emotional counselor and 1 academic counselor at the high school.
Where you need a second and a vote on the amendment.
Well, Mr. Arredondo's the second, so he can.
Well, and if Arredondo, it's did you
Ms.
second the
Halsey's-
amendment?
It's Ms. Halsey's original motion that she is modifying herself, and my second, I'm still seconding the original
amendment.
motion. So there's no need for any subsequent motion voting or any nonsense. Let's just vote on Ms. Halsey's motion.
You have to
Okay.
vote on the amendment.
We have,
We amended it.
It's a friendly amendment, so we don't have to vote.
We'll have to vote on
No,
the
you
original
don't.
one. Yes, you
I
do.
don't think so.
Look in the.
There's a reason why you're not president.
okay, let's vote on the amendment,
Which is, once
which
again,
is, it is now specified, not 2 counselors, but a social emotional counselor and an academic counselor. That
at
is
the
your-
high school.
At the high school, at San Marcos High School. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. 7. I oppose, 0. Now are we done with the discussion for the motion as amended? All in favor of the motion as amended? Raise your hand, please.
Again?
As amended, right?
As amended. 7 against 0.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we need to do the
We
budget
now have a
amendment.
budget amendment question, so
So
that
just need to
means
double it, yeah?
double the money.
Hey, that's the easy way to do it. And if you wanted us to bring you a second one at agenda prep, it's totally at your preference.
Well, let's just double it and approve it right now.
Double it.
To prove it, we already approved.
So
I move that we approve the 2020, October 2020 budget amendment to, what is that, 160,000?
61,596.
Okay, thank you, that amount.
Any
Who
questions or
seconded?
discussion?
Georgie Villalpando
Ms.
seconded.
Viapando, second. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor? 7, opposed, 0.
I move that we adjourn.
I hear a second from Mr. McLaughlin to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
7, opposed, 0. Thank God that Juan finally answered.
Yeah, Juan didn't want that overtime pay.